Okay, folks, if you'll take a seat, we'll go ahead and get started with the coordinating board meeting for October 22nd. And before we get started, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Dr. David Tischer as the secretary of the board for an announcement.
So as secretary of the board, I have the privilege of announcing that Governor Abbott yesterday appointed a new chairman to the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. We had an absence there. And it's none other than our very own Robert Jenkins, Fighting Texas Aggie class of 1981. Whoop, whoop. So congratulations to our new chairman.
Thank you, David. Appreciate that, and thanks for all that out there. And I will say, I got the call yesterday from the governor's office, and so here we are today. I was actually in Nashville at a meeting and had already planned, of course, to fly back for today's meeting. And so it made it even more fun on the flight back. So I'm looking forward to it, and thank you all very much for that. All right, so once again, welcome to the October 22nd board meeting. We've got an agenda today that we really need to be efficient in getting through. We need to be finished with our agenda by about 1:45. Okay, so if you see us in a little bit of a hurry from time to time, it is because we would then have quorum issues that would then cause significant problems. Also remember that the meeting is being broadcast via the internet. Well, I think we say that at every meeting that we have, and so please be reminded that everyone up here and the audience may be visible to anyone watching online. So be aware of that. Always look pretty and smile when you're on there. Also, of course, please make sure that you silence your cell phones and computers for the meeting. All right, so the other part that is nice to do, as everyone knows, Harold Hahn had resigned from the board in August, and so this is the first opportunity we've had to thank him publicly for his service to the board. And I'd like to read a resolution, and I think all of us that have served with Harold really enjoyed and respected the work that he did on the behalf of higher education for the state of Texas, and working with him on the board was always a pleasure and a lot of fun. Harold had a unique sense of humor and a real passion for the coordinating board. All right, so whereas Harold W. Hahn was appointed to the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board by Governor Rick Perry on August 1st, 2010, and reappointed to the board as chair on September 1st, 2013. And whereas during his tenure on the coordinating board, Chairman Hahn served with great leadership, distinction, and integrity. And whereas the coordinating board benefited greatly from his extensive business knowledge and expertise, which has resulted in increased efficiencies in agency operations, improved working relations with the business community, and an enhanced focus on workforce needs. And whereas Chairman Hahn was an effective leader through his decisiveness, strong commitment to the agency and higher education, and his ability to handle contentious issues with a great sense of humor. And whereas Chairman Hahn was a strong advocate for a number of critical higher education issues, such as increasing funding for student financial aid, aligning the funding formulas for higher education institutions with state goals in order to increase student success, and preparing a skilled workforce for a globally competitive economy. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the members of the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board on this 22nd day of October 2015 express our deepest appreciation to Mr. Hahn for his distinguished service as chair of this board and his unwavering dedication to higher education for all the people of Texas. And be it further resolved that the resolution be included in the minutes and that a copy of the resolution signed by the members of the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board be presented to Harold Hahn in recognition of the high esteem in which he is held. So,
move approval.
A second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And I think we all could give Mr. Hahn a warm, rousing round of applause and gratitude. All right, a couple of other quick announcements before we really get to the meat of the agenda. Our annual Texas Higher Education Leadership Conference, 60 by 30 text, the next long-range strategic plan for Texas higher education. So that's everything that we've been working for. Will be held in Austin on November 19th through the 20th at the Crown Plaza Austin Hotel, right near here. The conference will begin at 8 a.m. on November 19th with governing board orientation sessions for newly appointed regents and elected trustees and will conclude with the annual State of Higher Education Luncheon and Star Award Ceremony on November 20th. We hope you will join us for this important conference. And for those of you who have never attended, it's a wonderful meeting, and staff does a tremendous job of putting this on. It's very, very, very informative. At this time, Commissioner, I'll turn it over to you for your remarks.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I'd like to continue with the good news. We found out yesterday that Texas Workforce Commission is making a grant of $150,000 to the coordinating board so that we can work on developing our marketable skills initiative that's so much a part of 60 by 30 Texas. My colleague Nina Wright were at the meeting yesterday, and they were effusive in their support of what we're doing. Obviously, the marketable skills component is to some extent a result of our meeting with business leaders all over the state and talking about how we can work more closely, higher education workforce, to drive the Texas economy. And this grant is, I think, symbolic of the partnership that we have with not only the Texas Workforce Commission, but also with TEA. I want to particularly thank Chairman of the Texas Workforce Commission, Andres Alcantar, because he's been a very strong partner and a very strong advocate for the coordinating board. So that's good news. Regarding the agenda of the board this morning, the board meeting this morning, one of the things you'll learn is that when John Wyatt makes his presentation, that we're recommending that we slow down the pace at which we ultimately adopt a legislative agenda for the coordinating board. As you'll recall, our goal was to get it accomplished by January. After discussions with stakeholders, including members of the legislature and the governor's office, we thought that we needed to vet issues more fully and consider some issues that, frankly, we didn't take a look at very deeply. For example, a conversation I had with the chairman of the State Board of Education, Donna Bohorich, led me to think that we needed to take a look at our relationship with K through 12 more closely. The fact that our relationship with K through 12 is implicit in an interim charge to the Senate on higher education is another reason we should take a look at this. But the conversation with Chair Bohorich went extremely well, and we're going to invite her on a regular basis to interact with the board, to present to the board, and make sure that we have the appropriate level of cooperation between the state board and us. You'll see today, I think, beginning with the major policy discussion and the recognition of excellence, that we're starting to move steadily in the direction of aligning ourselves completely with achieving the goals of 60 by 30 Texas. Obviously, two key components are affordability. We'll have a major policy discussion on how a particular program or initiative lines up with affordability. We will also have our recognition of excellence indicates how institutions can more effectively promote student success. We're paying close attention to something that seems to be stirring around the country. A national community college leadership organization announced last week that they were going to find ways to get more involved with K through 12 and developing college and career readiness standards, which one of the things that occasionally troubles me is that we tend to develop college and career readiness standards in isolation. K through 12 does its, and higher education weighs in and says, no, it ought to be done this way. And what we actually need to do is to work together all through the process of developing college and career readiness standards and have common agreement about what those are. You'll hear more about transfer issues. Rex Peoples and David Gardner and I met with some community college leaders earlier in the week to talk about facilitating transfer. Obviously, that's an affordability issue. It's a time to degree issue, and it's something that we we need to take care of. But we are moving in the direction now that we've approved 60 by 30 Texas as a strategic plan for the next 15 years in Texas. We are going to move steadily to concentrate the work of the board, the agenda of the board, and the organization of the staff at the coordinating board to make sure that we have a very tight focus on achieving those goals, which are ambitious and will require a total commitment from us and from the higher education community between now and 2030.
Thank you, Commissioner. The second agenda item for approval are the minutes from the July 23rd board meeting and the September 22nd board retreat. We've got both of the minutes there. Do I have a motion to approve?
Yeah, second.
Motion.
You want one motion on both?
I was going to do both, if that's all right. Motion, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. All right, motion passes. The next is the consent calendar for the entire meeting. And as you know, the consent calendar includes non-controversial items that we think can be approved without comment and discussion. This allows us to save time for other items that need more of our attention for our discussion. I want to point out that our practice of putting most of the rules in the consent calendar, given the extensive vetting process that they go through. You'll notice, however, that a few of the rules are still on the regular agenda. Those are the rules that staff thinks we might want or need to discuss and or have received public comment. Of course, any board member can request that an agenda item be removed from the consent calendar. That will give us the opportunity to discuss it fully later in the meeting at the appropriate time. Does any board member want to remove any of the agenda items on the consent calendar at this time? Does anyone want to add anything to the consent calendar at this time? Okay. I'd like to add agenda item 6B and 6C relating to the allocation methodology for the Texas Educational Opportunity Grant Program. Agenda item 6D relating to the allocation of tuition revenue bond funds. Agenda items 6B and 6C were adopted by the board under an emergency basis in July, and no comments have been received. Additionally, no comments have been received for 6D. Any objections to that?
You're adding something.
Mm-hmm.
You need a motion?
Yes, I do. Thank you. And the second?
So that is item 6B, 6C, and 6D.
Yes, sir. Okay. I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Thank you very much. Motion passes.
So let's adopt the entire consent calendar. Move approval of the entire consent calendar.
Yes.
Second.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Thank you, David. All right, so now we come to agenda item 4, which is major policy discussion. And let me just say this, when we have our quarterly board meetings, we always have opportunities to go into topics that are very important to the state, and we're always very appreciative of to the folks that come and present to us. The adoption of open educational resources, OER, has been identified as one key strategy to address the rising costs of college attendance. In fact, just this month, the U.S. Department of Education announced the hiring of the first ever open education advisor to lead a national effort to expand institutions' access to high-quality open education resources. Today, we welcome a panel that will discuss the advantages and challenges of using open educational resources at institutions of higher education in the state and beyond. So with us today, we have Judith Sebesta, Director of Innovation, Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, Daniel Williamson, Managing Director of OpenStax at Rice University, Perry Moore, Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, Texas State University, and John Troutman, a student at Austin Community College. Once again, for the whole panel and for each of you, thank you very much for being here, and thank you for sharing your thoughts and ideas on this. Judith, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chairman Jenkins, and good morning, everybody. I want to open by talking a little bit about the definition of open educational resources and then give a brief overview of the national landscape of OER. But let me begin by giving some context that I think provides a very compelling argument for using open educational resources. As this graph indicates, there has been an 82% increase in textbook costs nationally between 2002 and 2012. And this is according to data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Price Index. According to the College Board, in 2014, the average textbook total cost per student annually was $1,277. At community colleges, textbook costs equaled 40% of the cost of tuition and fees. In a recent study commissioned by the U.S. Public Interest Research Group, 65% of the students surveyed indicated that they had decided not to buy a textbook because it was too expensive. Now, these students were clearly aware, however, that this choice potentially jeopardized their ability to be successful. 94% of the students were concerned that their grades would suffer as a result of not purchasing that textbook. Now, John Troutman from Austin Community College will be discussing the impact of textbook costs on his education in a moment. Open educational resources has been identified as one key strategy to address the rising costs of textbooks and thus college attendance. OER are teaching, learning, and research materials that are in any medium, digital or otherwise, public domain, or released under an open license, no cost to access, and their use is unrestricted. In other words, they can be used, adapted, revised, remixed, shared, and redistributed with no restrictions. Now, this can include things like textbooks, course readings, curricula, competencies, syllabi, quizzes, and other assessment tools, really virtually any other material that can be used for educational purposes. I would like to take a moment to note that free does not necessarily mean open. For example, massive open online courses, or MOOCs, although freely available to users, are not open educational resources in the purest sense. MOOCs are designed for reuse, but are not meant to be adapted, revised, or remixed. But MOOCs have certainly advanced the public discussion around the need to make a variety of low or no-cost educational resources available to students. We'll be hearing more about the use of MOOCs as low-cost alternatives to students from Dr. Perry Moore in a minute. Since 1998, several organizations and institutions in the U.S., some of them seen on this slide, have created initiatives to develop and advance the use of OER, including the Community College Consortium of OER and OpenStax at Rice University and others, and we'll be hearing more about OpenStax from Daniel Williamson. Some institutions across the United States that have adopted OER holistically include Maricopa Community College, which publicizes to students course options that have no cost and low cost, or under $40, learning materials for a student savings of nearly $5 million over 5 years. In 2013, Tidewater Community College in Virginia developed the first zero textbook cost Z degree, an Associate of Science degree program in business administration. Students save around $1,200 a year. The University of Maryland University College, which is Maryland's online college with over 84,000 students, eliminated textbooks for all undergraduates this fall and eliminated textbooks that cost anything for all undergrad courses this fall and will do so for graduate students next fall. Students will pay no money for textbooks. It's 84,000 students. This is projected to save students thousands of dollars over their academic program. And then finally, just recently, this month, the North Dakota University System with 11 campuses launched a campus-wide initiative funded by the legislature to use open educational resources. In Texas, in 2009, the University of Texas System Telecampus created the Texas Learning Objects Repository, jointly funded through grants by the Coordinating Board and the University of Texas Health Science System. After the closure of the telecampus, TexLore was transferred to the University of Texas at San Antonio, where it's housed and overseen by Dr. Sune Palsol, who is Associate Vice Provost for Digital Learning. The goal of TexLore is to create a web application that provides a method for Texas higher education institutions to review and share a variety of learning materials, especially materials associated with general and developmental education. Currently, the end of funding has meant an uncertain future for the repository. And finally, just a few opportunities and challenges related with open educational resources. Some of the challenges include things like the cost of and or time for the development and identification of these resources. As Kenneth C. Green, the author of the 2013 Campus Computing Survey, puts it, open source is not free beer, it's a free puppy. If I give you a free puppy, well, you have got some significant cost for that puppy in terms of attention, care, maintenance, and support. There's also issues of quality, whether or not they're peer-reviewed, vetted, issues of accessibility. Can students who are differently abled freely access these materials? And then finally, some of the opportunities include things like it can spur pedagogical innovation, support learning outcomes with usage analytics, primarily if they are available digitally. They can increase access to learning materials, and finally, they can decrease the cost of college attendance, therefore supporting the goals of 60 by 30 techs. Thank you. Daniel.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm very excited to talk about some of the interesting work that we're doing at Rice University. My name is Daniel Williams, and I'm the managing director of OpenStax, which is an educational technology company based at Rice University. We are a nonprofit housed within the university. So we actually got started back in 1999 with a project called Connections. It was started by a professor there named Rich Baranick. He got frustrated with the status quo of the publishing industry. He wasn't satisfied with any of the textbooks that were available. And so he went to his dean and said, I want to write a new textbook. And his dean said, hey, it's 1999. We can do better. There's this new thing called the internet. Go back to the drawing board. So he went back to the drawing board and he started thinking about what the perfect textbook for his class would look like. And he said, you know, it's going to be modular. It's going to be freely available so every single one of my students can get it. And also I want to make it openly licensed so that my friends and my colleagues that are experts in different areas of this field can contribute to it, and then we can tweak it and go back and forth and improve upon the work that each one of us is doing. And so we created a platform that allowed this to happen. This was Connections. And over time it grew. It now has 2 million users every single month, has 25,000 pieces of educational content. But in 2012, we took a step back and we looked at Connections and the impact that it was having. And we said, you know, this is great, but are we really reaching those students, like Judith just mentioned, that 50% of their total cost could be tied up in the cost of a textbook? And we said, you know, frankly, we're not. And the reasons we weren't were because the content in the repository was not incredibly easy to find. It wasn't turnkey. It didn't align to the standard scope and sequence requirements of, say, a traditional textbook that we see here. And so what we did is we went to the Hewlett Foundation, Laura and John Arnold Foundation in Houston, the Gates Foundation, and many other foundations, and we said, we'd like to create a library of the top 25 highest enrolled college courses, textbooks, make them freely available, and publish them online so that any student, any teacher can gain access to this. So this launched in 2012, and we published these under an open license. And our goals with OpenStax were to increase access to high-quality open educational content, to provide students with financial relief, and also to increase the academic freedom of our faculty. So they're no longer stuck with a one-size-fits-all textbook, but rather they can improve and tweak that, and as Judith mentioned, spur innovation in pedagogical design. This is coming at a very opportune moment when student indebtedness is now over $1 trillion. And also, as Judith mentioned, 7 out of 10 students were choosing not to buy the college textbooks that were assigned to them. So we choose to use a license. There are many different open licenses, but the one that we use is a Creative Commons Attribution license. This is the most open license. It allows for anybody to distribute, to remix, to tweak, to build upon, and even to use commercially the content that we're producing for our open textbooks. The only requirement associated with the use of our content is that you attribute us as the author. We have a growing library. We now have 19 books that are published. And let me take just a moment to talk about how we ensure quality. All of our content is peer-reviewed by academic experts in the field, subject matter experts. We invest heavily in recruiting editors and authors to make sure that the content is aligned to the standard scope and sequence of a typical college course. And one of the things that's very important about our content is that it is openly licensed, so faculty, as they see challenges or want to improve it or enhance it, they can actually contribute back and adapt the content content that's available today. So we also have many partners. We know that faculty often want ancillary materials like online homework systems, or perhaps they want online labs or different types of lab materials to go along with a biology course. So what we've done, because we know that we can't do everything, is we partnered with for-profit and nonprofit companies in order to create an ecosystem around our core content. So Sapling Learning is an example of this out of Austin. They're part of Macmillan New Ventures. They provide online homework around chemistry and physics and many other courses that we offer. And similarly, one of the most venerable publishers in the United States, John Wiley & Sons, has partnered with us as well to create a higher value option in biology. So faculty responses to this have been tremendous. Faculty are very reasonable, and they know that students are paying $1,200 a year. That's just not a sustainable business model, frankly. And so we've had faculty that email us every single day telling us how thankful they are to have this resource available to their students. And they're also noting that because students have access to the content on day one, and there's no barrier to getting it in the digital format, that the students have no excuse to not reading the assigned homework. And also what we're seeing, and in some of the research out of BYU is actually showing this, is that students are actually performing better now that they have access from day one. They don't have to wait till their financial aid money comes in to buy the textbook. And if students have a variety of different options on how they get the content. So all of our content is available as a PDF that can be downloaded for free, an EPUB that can be downloaded for free. They can use it online for free. And if they want it in a printed format, it does cost a little bit, but for this book right here, I believe it's about $50 as opposed to about $250. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about some of the amazing work that faculty are doing here in Texas. This is a picture of Richard Baldwin. He's a professor at Austin Community College in computer science. And he took it upon himself to actually enhance some of the content that was available in Connections to make sure that it was incredibly enhanced for visually impaired students. So one of the ways that faculty can actually contribute back to this open community. So progress so far. In the 3 years that OpenStax has been around, we now have over 2,000 adoptions. We're actually closing in on 2,500 adoptions. We have over 500,000 students that have benefited from these open textbooks, which results in a cumulative savings of around $50 million. We also, just as a side metric, over 2.5 million learners have downloaded the textbooks. So of that 500,000 students, right, there are even more students outside of our traditional adoption metrics, where a faculty member has told us, I have this many students using this book. We have 2 million students that are saying, I just can't afford the text, I'm going to use something else. And this adoption metric down at the bottom, the 1,000 different institutions, these are unique institutions across the United States, and that represents about 22% of all degree-granting institutions now using at least one OpenStax text. But let's look just at Texas, because frankly, Texas is leading the way in the adoption of OpenStax college content. We have about 246 adoptions in Texas, about 100,000 students, about almost $10 million in cumulative savings, and Texas alone has around 500,000 downloads of the books. And so this is about 52% of all Texas degree-granting institutions have at least one OpenStax text being used there. So what's working?
Mr. Williamson, what you said 246 adoptions. What does that mean?
So an adoption is one book being used at one school. So if you have a single faculty member using this chemistry text at Austin Community College, or you have 2 faculty members using it at, say, Houston Community College, it's the exact same. It's one adoption. So one book at one school. Okay. So I'll speed through this quickly, what we think is working. Tarrant County Community College has done a tremendous job. There's been tons of administrator support. Dr. Coppola there has been a huge proponent of open educational resources. He hosts faculty workshops, and they also have a system-wide OER committee that brings in faculty from around the committee or the system in order to promote the use of OER. And then finally, one of the big institutional systems in the University University System of Georgia, they've actually launched a program called Affordable Learning Georgia, where they offer textbook transformation grants to faculty around their system. And with an investment of just $300,000 in 1 year, they were able to save over $2.2 million. So I think there's a ton of opportunities here. And even though Texas is leading the country in terms of number of adoptions, we still have a long way to go in terms of promoting wide-scale mainstreaming of this affordable content. So thank you very much for your attention.
Mr. Williamson, would you give us just a kind of an example of how the process works, whether you're contacted by an individual faculty member, by an academic department, an institution, what their questions are, and what the service ultimately looks like and what the process is?
Sure. So the number one question we get is, what's the catch? Right? Free textbooks, that's insane. Well, the catch is that we don't have a huge sales force. We don't operate like a traditional publisher in the sense that we're going to go door to door and knock on your door until you say, I'm going to use that textbook. Instead, what we do is we go and we send out email blasts to faculty, letting them know that there is a value option available. When a faculty member then reviews that content, we will send them either a free physical comp or they can download the content online. We believe that faculty are the best judges of the quality of the content and are best suited to make the decisions for their course. So the whole academic freedom idea is something that we believe in. And so giving them the opportunity to review this content, if they choose to adopt it, then they adopt it. All they have to do is actually, they don't have to do anything. They just adopt it and point their students to the link on the website, and the student can download that content. If they'd like to have printed copies made available in their bookstore, we work with the National Association of College Stores to make sure that that can be facilitated. And if they want different types of online homework solutions, like I mentioned, we have partners that they can choose from. And I think that's very important because now a teacher can choose to use one textbook but not be locked into one publisher's online homework solution. But other than that, it's very much like a traditional textbook, and I'm happy to leave this around so you can take a look at it. The content looks very much the same. The scope and sequence is very much the same. And the way you use it is very much the same as a traditional text.
So I'm going to ask a question, but I'd like to hear from the rest of the panel, just kind of an open-ended question. This is something I've been thinking about for at least a decade or two. The question is how do you track changes? Because by being digital online, you can automatically, instantaneously update it, whereas you publish a textbook, it's out of date when I get it in my front door,
right,
when it comes and is delivered. Are there track changes in these? Do the learner who downloaded it or looked at the PDF, do I get an email saying there's updates and there's 29 different places and they're annotated that are now new learning, you're in the middle of the course? And then the other question is, what kind of puppies do you have? And don't you have to feed them and deal with the results of feeding them as well? But I'd like to hear from the other panelists before you actually answer that, but kind of be thinking about that because I know you've got good answers to that.
Well, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm Perry Moore, Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs of the Texas State University System, which is the third largest in our state. And our system is one of the more efficient, I believe, in the state, but we continue to search for other ways to make it even more efficient. And our participation in the project, the Freshman Year for Free, is another example of our efforts to attempt to decrease the cost for students seeking an education, higher education. We've joined other universities in this effort. In fact, we're the first public system in Texas to join this Freshman Year for Free, but Rice is also involved in it. Others, SUNY, the Pennsylvania State System of Higher Education is in it, Tennessee Board of Regents. So a number of different systems have participating in it. It's created by the Modern States Education Alliance, and what they're seeking to do is to offer 30 high-quality freshman-level courses, tuition-free, online, covering the major topics for which there are advanced placement and CLEP exams in order to receive such credit. These 30 courses will be MOOCs developed through edX, which is a major nonprofit MOOC consortium founded by Harvard and MIT. Also partnering is the UT system. It also includes Berkeley, Caltech, Dartmouth, Princeton. So it's a reputable MOOC consortium. The students will take the MOOCs through edX, again, tuition-free, using online open resources. And these courses will directly prepare students to take the advanced placement exams and the CLEP exams. And, of course, these already exist and have existed for some time for courses that are open for credit at all of our institutions in our system. The text and materials will be free, and Modern States hopes to add tutoring and counseling over time at little or no cost for the students who are taking these courses. Once the students have completed the courses, they, of course, will be able to take the advanced placement exam or the CLEP exams for credit at our institutions. And as I said, already all of our and this is something that's particularly novel about this approach. It doesn't require that the institutions change policies. It requires them only to carry forth with the policies they already have in terms of providing credit through the AP or CLEP exams. The costs for the exams are, of course, there. It's not completely free. You do have to pay for the cost of the exam, but it's less than $100. And even for those who have financial needs, it could be somewhere in the range of $53 or a bit more. But none of this would be possible if we didn't have open resources for students to make use of. And that's my primary reason for being here today, is to lend support for the development of these resources and for faculty to use them. Thank you.
Good morning, members of the board. My name is John Troutman, and I'm an engineering student at Austin Community College. I've been fortunate enough to use OpenStax textbooks on 2 occasions. First, I was introduced to the resource in a biology class at the University of North Texas. Currently, I am enrolled in physics at ACC, where I am using an OpenStax book. I've been quite impressed with the quality of these textbooks in both instances. I find the descriptions of topics well thought out, and the graphics and examples exceedingly helpful. It is clear to me that the books benefit from the collaborative efforts of multiple faculty members that is the way of the OpenStax college format. Furthermore, the fact that these textbooks are at no cost to the student is truly a blessing. I am a non-traditional student in that I already hold a bachelor's degree. I am paying my own way through my education, working at a call center for slightly above minimum wage earnings. I also was denied financial aid due to the stringent requirements placed on students who are pursuing a second bachelor's degree. So you can imagine how much a $200 textbook actually sets me back. That is approximately 20 hours of work, or nearly a third of my wages for an entire month. Multiply that by 2 or 3 classes, and you will quickly find the cost of books rapidly approaching the cost of tuition. It just doesn't seem right to me that books should cost as much as actually receiving an education in the classroom over several months. It just doesn't make sense. In my experience, I have not found these exorbitantly priced textbooks to be 200 times better than an OpenStax book. In fact, I prefer the OpenStax resources and have even been known to read them in my spare time. I sincerely hope that more professors statewide will choose to utilize OpenStax resources in the classroom. This relies heavily on there being an awareness that the resources are available. I would also very much like to see OpenStax have the opportunity to address advanced topics in their curriculum. Surely this too depends on the success of the textbooks already published. I'm grateful to OpenStax College for the high level of education I've received from them, and I hope that I have the opportunity to continue using their educational resources in the future. Thank you.
All right, panel, thank you all very much. Board members, questions?
Yeah,
David, you had
does
asked
somebody
yours
want to answer my question now that I've heard from all of you?
Sure.
Whoever feels like they can do it the best.
I can take a stab at the version control and that side of the question, and actually I can take a stab at the puppies as well.
Yes, don't
Hopefully not real puppies though.
Yeah, don't harm the puppies. Don't stab them. Be nice to the puppies.
So with regard to the question about how do we maintain quality and keep the content up to date. So one thing that we do a little bit differently than one of the other open resource providers, Wikipedia, is we have a canonical version. The canonical version is owned and controlled by OpenStax. No one can edit that version of the content. What they can do is they can suggest that there are errata. And when a faculty member or a student submits an errata submission, what we do is we send it off to a panel of subject matter experts who say, okay, yes, this is an error, or maybe this just is a place we have to clean up some text. And then what we will do is digitally release a new revision every month. A print version, because of the nature of print and not being able to update it so frequently, we release a new revision of that every single year. And then all of the revisions that we have either decided are in fact errata and need to be updated, or have determined that they are in fact not errors based on the subject matter expert review. That is all published on our website. So you go and you look at the revision number of the book that you have, and then it will pull up any errors that have been published since that revision number. So that's how we handle that. Of course, faculty members can always derive a copy and create their own version of this book. So, a professor at ACC could come along, create a revision of this chemistry book, and update it all right then and make it available to his students as his version, and he would retain control of that. And we have no control over what he puts in that content. And then in terms of the puppies. So the way that OpenStax is sustainable, we rely on very large amounts of philanthropic support from Hewlett and Gates. In fact, we've raised about $20 million to support this endeavor. That funds the initial content creation, which is an expensive process if you're going to create very high quality content. After that, though, our partners like Sapling Learning, John Wiley & Son, WebAssign, they provide these value-added services around that core content. And when they sell that for $50, $20, somewhere around there, a portion of the proceeds comes back to support our ongoing sustainability. Because we don't have a huge sales force, we are a lean organization and can afford to operate on lean margins.
So you used a term I'm not familiar with, canonical. Can you spell that for me? Because I'm going to have to speak in Denver this evening. I want to impress these really intelligent people.
CANONICAL.
None of us know if he's right or wrong is the answer.
And so
He's right.
expand on what exactly does that mean? Because that clearly is a base word that we have to all understand if we're going to understand what you're doing with it.
Right. So what we mean by canonical is the version that we own and control. If we were to think about the canon, like the official, what are they called in literature?
Literary canon.
Yeah, exactly. Or it's the typical library, the standard library. That's what we refer to as canonical. So if someone were to create a derivative, that's not part of the canon. The canon is what OpenStax owns and controls.
So
Canon typically means the great books in a given discipline.
right. It makes perfect sense now that it's been explained to me. So as this is really extremely important, is it possible for us to create a research library where the entire core could be online to any resident of Texas or of the universe to actually go through the first 60 hours of core, complete those, pay for the exams, take the exams, never show up, never have to go bricks and mortar, just do it on your own, maybe do it in the 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, and next thing you know, you're in the 15th grade? Is it possible? Is there a vision there that we're going in that direction? Because I could see it going that way. Is that going to be possible? Because I've had this debate with really smart educators who said you can't learn that way. And I don't think that that's true. I think you can learn this way. And I think there are students capable of a self-paced course as long as you give them the right resources.
I think you hit the nail on the head, which is for some students, that could be a possibility. I don't think there's going to be a panacea where we say, okay, give them a free textbook, give them a free online course, and then it's just solved. But for some students who are incredibly motivated, I think that's a potential possibility. One of the things that shocked me recently, another thing that OpenStax does is create adaptive online courseware. It's through a Gates grant about the next generation online coursewares. One of the things that we've done is we've actually deployed this in Houston area high schools in advanced placement biology and high school physics. And I guess being at Rice, I was shocked when I saw that only 80% of students were doing their homework. This is in a classroom with a teacher with, state-of-the-art materials, and only 80% were completing their homework. I was like, what are these other 20% doing? And I guess it just exposed me to the reality that, in fact, some students need extra motivation. Some students don't have the intrinsic motivation to complete it. And so no matter how many courses and resources that you throw at the student, without sort of that teacher promotion and encouragement, I don't personally don't know if I believe there's a future without that type of instruction.
And Dr. Tesher, I wanted to follow up by mentioning that during the 83rd Texas legislature, the legislature did commission a study for the coordinating board to do with the Virtual College of Texas on open educational resources. One of the recommendations in that study is to develop OER for lower division gen ed courses in Texas. That study was completed just a year ago in October of 2014.
Dr. Moore, I think you had something to say.
If you ask me if it's possible, yes. Is that good? Yes. Is it as good as perhaps face-to-face, small courses going through the same set of courses? No. But is it preferable over not being able to get this education? Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's the analysis. I mean, you've summed it up very, very, very well, and that's what we have to be thinking about. And what does that mean, and what's that opportunity present us? John?
So I just want to begin, Ms. Sebesta, to compliment you. You did an excellent job on your presentation. And did you put the panel together? I did. It's really been interesting, and I love it that we have a director of innovation. I think that's great. The commissioner reminds us always to focus on the welfare of the students, and so what's grabbing my attention is providing financial relief to our students. So one of the things, we come from the private sector, and so I want to ask you a question. So when I was in high school, what we did, we got our textbooks, and they were passed down to us. And so you'd always look at the front. Sometimes you'd have fun looking at the names, like who owned that textbook before you. So it seems part of your presentation like you're talking that students are constantly buying new textbooks. And so I know it's a little bit off what you're talking about, but it just raised a question in my mind about that. And the other thing, just an observation, it's to me puzzling that the textbook publishing industry would seem to be on its way out, and yet that first chart you showed that they're dramatically increasing their costs, that doesn't make sense to me, going up 82% in 10 years. So, but anyway, what about these used textbooks?
Well, I was a faculty member for over 15 years, and so I do understand a faculty perspective, which for many faculty is, I want academic freedom to select the textbooks that are used in my classroom. And so that's been I would say, a large issue with this, that many faculty members do not want to be told what textbook they are to use. Some of these faculty members may have published their own textbook through Pearson or Macmillan or McGraw or any of the large textbook publishers. And the textbook industry is huge. There's a lot at stake for them to stay alive, so to speak, and they're agile in some really, I would say, surprising ways as they attempt to remain alive and transfer some of their formerly hard copy textbooks into digital copies, and providing some of the types of things that Daniel was talking about in terms of test banks and assessments and analytics and adaptive learning tools. But there's a lot at stake, I think, for faculty to have a say and a choice in what books are used in their classroom. While I also know that most faculty also are very conscious of the expenses that their students incur to go to school.
But doesn't this process allow them to add and subtract and to customize it? I mean, that was one of the big features that I thought was a real, if I was a faculty, that would be something that would be attractive.
It does, but that takes time. That it can take a significant amount of time to do that.
I'm sorry.
Christie.
Did you want to respond to that, right? If faculty would realize some of the statistics, they might have a different view. If they believe the text is being read, that's one thing. But if you find that, what was that stat, that 60-something% perhaps do not read the text, would it be better to have your specialized text that they don't read, or to have an open source text which perhaps doesn't cover in all regards what you would like, but that they may be more likely to read and to study because it's there and available and free? I'm nearing the time that I'm going to leave higher ed, retire. But 40 years ago in the Ice Age, when I started this, when you had a Common Core course in a larger university in which there were multiple sections of the course, the faculty had to come together and agree on a text. And they had academic freedom then, but they all agreed that they, more or less, that they needed to come together because it was a common course, supposedly providing the same thing to all students, and it wouldn't be just a happenstance of choice of course as to what you got, that you would select the text and that would be used. So I'm not as quick as some to say that academic freedom in all regards guarantees every single professor in all instances the right to have complete, utter control over the selection of a text. This, I believe, is more significant in more specialized courses and graduate courses, but we're talking about the Common Core that is required by the state of Texas and has a curriculum approved by the state of Texas.
I would just like, because I was sounding like a devil's advocate for a moment ago, I'd like to be an advocate for you, OER, right now, and say that as a faculty member, when I first learned about open educational resources about 8 years, a decade ago, my concerns were with quality, and I think those concerns were well-founded at that point. What I am seeing is that the quality is increasing dramatically, and there are now studies, as Daniel had mentioned, that are showing that student outcomes are as good, if not better, when they are using open educational resources.
David?
Yeah, it's an excellent idea. I just was wondering about not only with the textbook, but can you add some actual video, a professor showing how you're solving a mathematical problem or some experiment? That would really help the students. I think so.
Definitely. So our goal is not to stop with just textbooks. Unfortunately, if we try to rush too much innovation into the classroom, we'll probably be kicked out of the door, right? And so instead, what we try to focus on is how do we fit into the current workflow and slowly implement new additions or innovations into the texts. So throughout our text, what we do is we actually have embedded simulations, have embedded videos. If they're in paper form, it's a link out to, you can like scan it with your cell phone and watch it on your cell phone. But the next step is, let's ingest this into this adaptive learning system that I mentioned earlier that actually would customize the content not only based on your teacher's preferences, but also what you as a student like to see. You know, the learning styles is kind of a debunked theory for most cognitive psychologists. But what isn't, I guess, debunked is preferences. You might like to watch videos better. You might like to do simulations more in order to sort of understand chemistry or physics phenomena. And so we can provide that sort of flexibility through how the content is structured digitally.
And there are those resources out there. For example, Khan Academy has some really good instructional videos for a variety of fields, particularly in the STEM disciplines. But again, it takes time to find them, select them, curate them, et cetera.
Thank you.
Christina?
As a student, I have a couple comments and a couple questions. First, I would like to commend this effort because as a student, yes, textbooks are very expensive. And then I also really liked the feature of the teacher being able to rearrange it. In a lot of my classes, teachers will rearrange the chapters on their own. And so we'll have a syllabus and we never know, which chapter's next. And so, we'll have tests over, chapter 15 and chapter 2. And so it's great that they get to rearrange. It's much easier to follow along. And I wanted to comment on Mr. Steen's comment about the passing down of textbooks. As a student, especially with my core classes, I've loved saving my textbooks for future use. And I have been able, especially my transition from going from undergraduate to graduate, I save my textbooks and I have referred back to my undergraduate textbooks to review when, presupposed knowledge. And I also, many students like to mark in their textbooks and highlight things and star things. So if you can keep your textbook, then you can make it more of your own. It's for your own studying tools. And then I have two questions. My first question is for Mr. Williamson. And I lost my question. I guess I'll go for my second question to Dr. Moore. Is the freshman year for free? Is that online only, or do students have the option of going to a class or having a tangible teacher that they can correspond with?
It's online. However, as I said, the CLEP and AP exams are there now, so the students could be studying on their own or in some other way to take those exams, and if they do, they would get credit for them. But this proposal and this project that I mentioned today is online through edX. And it's not yet available, but will be within the year.
David?
So to Mr. Troutman, obviously you're reading a lot of these texts on your own. You must be an insomniac. Just kidding. What do you perceive as a potential drawback, other than the fact that you really need to have some faculty interaction to say, I need this explained in a greater degree of detail at times? I mean, are there things that these online textbooks, open access, just doesn't give you? Have you run into any of those roadblocks?
I really haven't. When you just compare the traditional textbook with the open resources, I prefer the open resources. I feel like the quality is just exceptional. And there's a uniformity that goes through them, in my experience, that is you kind of feel like you know what to expect, although you don't know the subject matter yet. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. And I just had a article published in a scientific journal last year and was asked, do you want this to be an open access article? Well, they asked me to pay for that, and I didn't want to pay for that, even to make it free for everybody else. But the editor liked it so much, the editor decided they were going to make it open access. This really looks like it's almost a derivative of exactly that, where as the science continues to get published, we're going to put it out there and make it for free. I mean, this really could revolutionize where education, not just higher education, but education goes, and really even adult education for those who didn't complete their degree and said, look, I got a full-time job, I've got a family to raise, but I've got 2 or 3 hours every evening I can devote to this, and I can go ahead and get my degree completed through a program similar to what you're saying. I can do this course, but I still think there has to be a resource where you have an expert to say, I'm challenged by this one concept, I don't understand it, help explain it to me. I don't think ultimately there's going to be a substitute for a faculty mentor, faculty/mentor. Ultimately, you're going to need some resources there. And so I appreciate everything you guys said, and I'm very excited by it.
I remembered my question. For Mr. Williamson, how are the authors paid or compensated for their work?
Yeah, that's a good question.
So all of our authors and reviewers are paid. As I mentioned, we've raised about $20 million to fund our library. So each one of these books costs between $500,000 to $1 million to produce based on the courseware. And the majority of that funding goes to pay authors, pay reviewers, pay illustrators to create the illustrations for the books. So they are compensated. The difference between our model and a traditional publisher model is, since royalty on free is not very good, instead we pay them up front as a contract rather than you'll get royalties, which is what a traditional publisher usually structures their contract.
Question, Commissioner?
Well, all this is very exciting. I particularly want to comment Vice Chancellor Moore and Chancellor Call and your colleagues at the Texas State System for taking the leadership role on this project. This is enormously important for the young students of Texas who are increasingly poor, and theoretically could reduce the cost of a baccalaureate degree by a quarter if you're successful in taking this effort statewide. We'll be watching what you're doing very closely and hope to replicate it all over the state. But thank you for your leadership and for your concern about affordability.
So, panel, thank you very much for being here. Each one of you really added a lot to the conversation, and we're greatly appreciative. Thank y'all. So while we're changing out panels, while our next panel comes up, we're going to take a brief break for the next couple of minutes while we change out.
That's interesting.
Yes, no,
Yeah.
Our break. And we are going to go to agenda item number 5, which is the recognition of excellence. And every time we do this, this truly is the highlight of our board meetings, and we have the recognition of excellence. And so we always look forward to this part. The recognition of excellence is meant to showcase models of excellence within the education community and highlight the outstanding work of our education faculty and administrators and institutional programs around the state. Today we're going to showcase 2 institutions, Sam Houston State University and Odessa College. They were recently selected as Models of Excellence 2015 Summer Honorees by University Business Magazine for innovative student success programs. With us today from Sam Houston State University, Provost Dr. Jaime Habert and Dr. William Bill Fleming, the Executive Director, Student Advising and Mentoring Center, John Jordan, Director of Academic Support Programs, and Miguel Arriaga, Elite Program Coordinator. And if I butchered your names, let me just say I apologize up front. From Odessa College, we have President Gregory Williams and Dr. Donald S. Wood, Vice President of Institutional Effectiveness. And truly, congratulations to both institutions for the work that you're doing. And once again, we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us to share what you're doing. We all benefit, not just our board, but those around the state who hear from each of you. So your time investment to be here is truly appreciated, and you are to be commended. So thank you for all of that, and I'll turn the program over to Sam Houston State.
Hi. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Great. So this is a longer PowerPoint. We gave a presentation at Nakata not that long ago, so forgive me. We're going to zoom through some slides, okay? So trends, we probably already know that male minorities across the entire nation, across the state, are not performing as well, compared to their counterparts in any other populations. Their graduates are basically 35.2% and 42.7% respectively, 6-year graduation rates, which is not great. Basically, 1 1/3 African-American males is graduating. That's a kind of very low stat. Sam Houston, we're doing much better overall as a campus with almost 50% on both of those levels, but we felt we had a need about 6 years ago with the Bridging the Gaps initiative that I came up with to push this forward. So we came up with the ELITE program, which stands for Sam Houston Establishing Leadership in and Through Education. It's a very simple program. It's based on mentoring. So we have peer mentors, so fellow students, African-American males and Hispanic males, who work with incoming freshmen, Hispanic males, African-American males. They have small groups once a week, 10 to 12 students per mentor, and it's for 1 hour. And they cover everything you can possibly think of. We're talking study skills, we're talking policies on campus, we're talking about general survival and cultural issues from the campus and academic culture in general. We also have a monthly speaker series that we call Grassroots, where we invite leaders from the community to come and speak about basically anything they can about how they went from their lower level of abilities in education all the way through graduation and then their current excellence in the field. Summers when we do our recruitment, we have 8 to 9 orientations. We pull from students from there. We actually use the mentors to do the recruiting, so they get to see who they'll be working with throughout the entire year. We do lots of things for marketing. We take between 50 and 70 incoming freshmen each semester, and we do an application with short answer, basic demographics. They all have to go through an interview where we explain to them what the program is all about, what they'll be required to do in the program. And we basically come, first serve. So we're not cherry picking the students. We're taking whoever wants to be involved at the very beginning. During the fall, we focus on academics for their studies, right? We do study skills. It's 6 sessions, each an hour long, that cover things like how to prepare for school, procrastination, because we all do it, time management, because they've got no clue, how to take notes, critical reading skills, taking strategies, things along those lines, as well as a resource guide. They actually have to go through all of our different resources on campus, see where they're located, actually talk to the people there to make those connections themselves. The peer mentoring, once again, is that once per week peer mentoring groups. We do grade check forms for accountability, so they have to talk to their faculty members. Also, they actually get to see their grades, and they come back and bring it back to us to talk to them about that information. We do it at least twice a semester, once after midterms, once right before finals, so they can see where they're going with it and make good decisions to prioritize their study time. We also have a tutoring system set up within the program, so it's fellow peer tutoring as well, and they can actually get matched up from that point with their fellow mentors at that point. Spring semester, we focus on resource management and networking. So basically, we look once again at all the student resources, and we make sure that they talk to the leadership in those communities. They once again have a form to sign off of, and they talk to the directors and associate directors to once again make those connections. Those grassroots that we talk about, that speaker series once a month, that's a networking opportunity. Representatives from a variety of different things come and speak to those small groups. We're talking associate deans, people from the university itself who are in leadership positions, all the way through local community leaders as well. We have an advisory board that helps out with this networking with 16 members in it, ranging from the vice president of finance and operations. We have an associate dean on board. We have chairs of departments and then directors of various different resources on campus also. We have various different components. That weekly or that monthly speaking series was grassroots. We have community and university-based service, of which we keep increasing the numbers because they keep blowing past them. Currently, it's 10 hours per semester required, and we've already had students who have already doubled that as of this semester. They're doing phenomenal. We do offer incentives with this program. We do offer them a stipend for textbooks, but it's based on their GPA. Originally, it was a 2.5 GPA. Now it's a 2.5 for their first semester as a freshman, but by the end of their second semester to get that stipend, they must have a 3.0 overall GPA, which we have about an 85% attainment for. Early registration, which we do through the registrar's office. Scantrons and Blue Books, which are actually some of their favorite incentives. They're by our offices all the time to pick those up. We offer T-shirts for buy-in. By T-shirts, I mean polos, because they like to look nice, and they love it. They wear that thing with pride. And we give graduation cords, which they think is just the end-all, be-all for graduation. We started that last year. Outcomes, we do stats and fun things like that. Simple answer is that our elite program, which is the far right column, outperforms in every single aspect, not only against a comparison group on campus, but the overall male minority population on the entire campus. And, well, they do really, really well. We have a lot of different future directions. I'm not sure if y'all are interested in that. Go ahead. All right. We've already started piloting what we call a management program. We've taken 10 of the advanced level students, juniors and seniors currently, and we started this summer, and we put them through 6 different workshop series ranging on intensive resume and interviewing skills, leadership theory, and all that kind of good fun stuff, management practice. That's what we're doing during the summer. We had leadership retreats. We made them read leadership books, and they devoured them. Faster than I even read them, that they love this material. We're doing leadership discussions right now, which I actually have one tomorrow, where they pick a leadership topic, and they actually lead the entire presentation for an hour on that topic amongst the group discussion. And they are also currently doing a shadowing program where they meet up with somebody on campus who's in a leadership position and follow them for 20 hours during the semester to see what they're doing and learn from what they're operating from that. We're switching it to a 4-year comprehensive program starting this year. First year is, once again, academics, resorts, things like that. Year 2 is interviewing and internships. Year 3 is public speaking in grad school or future career options. And year 4 is, once again, what do you do when you graduate, intensive preparation for that next step. Community outreach, we're increasing that even more. We've already been speaking to about 3 different school districts. We're hoping to double that by the end of the year. We're reaching out to local school districts as well to reach out to them to offer peer mentoring for their, freshman, sophomore, junior, secondary school. And then, of course, our own students are going back to their own schools and giving presentations on what it is like to survive in college. Future directions, y'all actually funded us for the first 5 years of our lives. Thank you very much for that, by the way. Appreciate that. Because we have made such good friends with the leadership on our campus. They love us too. Thank you, by the way. And they've actually gotten funding for us to continue moving forward. Of course, we're always looking for additional funding. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. And we are also creating a student-led organization because we can only take so many students because of funding. We have a lot of students who are interested in, they come by, who are transfer students, who hear about us later on in their career. So we're creating a student-led organization for those students that will mirror much of what we do with the elite program, minus the incentives and minus some of the other full-blown programmatics that we have. References and, of course, questions?
Asking questions at this time? John?
Tell me about the funding. How much have we given you?
It varied a little over the years. The first year fund, I think, was $50,000. and then it stayed that range pretty much for the first 5 years. It did get elevated to, I think, around 80,000 for the last year because of some residual. I don't know what happened with it, but we got more money.
Was the thought from the beginning to get it started, and then you all would pull away from that funding?
I wasn't fully involved in it in the very beginning. It's only been the last year or so that I've been involved for it, so I'm not sure what the creators of the program were thinking on that point. I know that we would love to be self-sustained at some point in time, but given the number of students that we're going to be increasing to, more funding is always needed from somewhere.
The first year it was $50,000, and we had 30 students in the program at that point. Mm-hmm. And then we increased the next year to 45, and then to 70, and then we've had to pull back a little bit, but it's been around $50,000 each year. This year it's more because we have more students involved on the upper levels. Right. Before it was primarily freshmen, but now since we have the elite alumni involved, they're part of the program too, and we want to keep them involved with the program because they're really the workers in the program now. It's difficult to believe, but this program is run by one person. And it's out of an office, but we've had one person in charge of it since the beginning, and Dr. Bernice Strauss was in charge of it before she retired, and then Miguel, who is in charge of it now, was one of the students in the very first program. So he knows how it was run the first year, and he's kept it going, and so we're looking at some more people to get involved because it's such a good program.
I've got a question. Is it only for minority male members?
Yes.
Why is that?
Because that was the original grant, and we kept it that way because it seems to work that. We've gotten that question on several occasions. Usually during orientations when we are talking to various different students, why not as well? And the simple answer is we can always revolve back to the entire funding aspect as well as the stats. Women are outperforming men in basically every single ethnic group out there, and not by a little, by a lot. So this is where the need is at this point in time. Now, are we looking to hopefully bridge out? We'd love to. But once again, that requires personnel and the underlying issues from there.
When we first started the SAM Center, the Student Advising Mentoring Center back in 2002, one of the stats we looked at was the grade range across campus, and we investigated it and found out that the group that was having the poorest grades on campus were minority males. And so we decided we needed to have a program of some sort to help them with their grades. And so this is one of the programs that developed from that. It took 2 or 3 years, but it got started, and it's really been very successful. What's really interesting about the program too, I think, is that the students are just chosen at random. There is no particular aspect to, they don't have to have a certain kind of grades in high school or first generation or anything like that. It's just that we just talk to them and get them into the program. So we have a cross section of students. And the mixture of students between African American and Hispanic is very interesting too, and how well they work together.
A minute ago, you mentioned the need for greater funding as your students grow. My question is is the alumni base contributing at all to the program, and is a alumni contribution encouraged and that concept developed while they're still a student?
We are actually pushing that now. We haven't gone too much, at least before me, to go talk to the alumni organizations. We've pushed that a lot more now. We're getting buy-in from them. It's a slow process, but it's definitely moving forward. As for contributions from them when they graduate, this is only the 6th year in existence, so the first cohort graduated. There's only 30 of them. The second one was only 45. But they are still definitely involved. We're actually hosting our first alumni weekend, our homecoming game this Saturday, and we've already gotten 26 of them confirmed to come back, which is about a happy number. So they're definitely buying into it.
One other quick question. You talked about going this program in the high schools. Mm-hmm. I'm very intrigued by that. I mean, to me, that's the place where if we get them involved in this kind of support and success, that moving into the next level is going to be that much more of an opportunity. What's happening in that, and what are your thoughts on it?
We've made a lot of inroads with the counselors at a lot of different schools. Once again, mainly it's because the students themselves are already associated with those schools, so they are most definitely our best mouthpieces for that. They go back and talk to their fellow, their friends, their teachers, and stuff like that. It's phenomenal. We have talked to people in San Marcos, in Palacios, in Houston, surrounding areas in Huntsville, Riverside, Trinity, and I think there's about 10 different schools we go to talk to rather habitually. And they keep inviting us back each year. The students love it. It kind of gives them a point of, I can do it too.
Right.
And we keep pushing forward. The actual mentoring aspects in high schools, that's something we're developing right now. That requires a lot more of an underpinning foundation to it, planning for it. And it's kind of in a general thought process creation, although there are a couple of schools that we're already talking to actually get that running for next year.
Well, that would be exciting.
About 3 years ago, in fact, we did have high school students come on campus with the elite program, and they went to classes with the elite. And but the logistics of getting all that put together is very difficult. But it was a very exciting time when they were on campus for the day and got to meet teachers and have a college experience.
That actually is done in the spring semester. We'll be doing that again this next semester.
Commissioner?
To follow up on Mr. Anwar's question, is there a significant differential between the performance of African American and Latino males on one hand and poor white males on the other?
Yes.
There is. How big a gap?
I haven't seen the most recent stats on that,
rates.
but over years, we're talking about a 10 to 15% difference.
Wow.
So you all are here today because you were nationally recognized, right, by this University Business Magazine. And so we want to compliment you on that, and then tell us what that entails. Is it just great to be recognized, or is there anything that comes along with that?
Blue ribbon.
Money.
Fame, glory, all that kind of good stuff.
I think the recognition is really great. I think not only for us but also for our university, that's showing that they back us all the way with these programs. And as far as the Advising and Mentoring Center is concerned, that's what we're trying to do. Is we're trying to develop programs to help all of our students. And if we can do certain populations at a time, that will spread then. But I think that the national recognition is very nice. And also we've had other people who've requested information about it. And when we presented at NACADA this year too, we had 86 people that came to our session from across the country, and that was really nice too. And we hope to spread the word on what a good program this is, and that really anyone can do it, but it does take some work. So,
Thank y'all. Dr. Williams, Dr. Wood, we'll turn to y'all now.
Commissioner Paredes, Chairman Jenkins, and board members, first of all, on behalf of President Williams and myself, on behalf of Odessa College, thank you so much for honoring us and our college by inviting us to share with you some of the work we've been doing out in Odessa. That work begins with the premise of our president, Dr. Williams, which is for Odessa College to become the finest community college in the nation as judged by student success, student outcomes. Before I show any data, let me tell you what those outcomes are. We started with a simple premise 4 years ago in 2011, and since then have built through a number of interlocking programs, a series of programs to help our students do what? First and foremost, we're not going to increase the number of graduates unless we can start by keeping them in class and going to class. Second, once they're in the class, they've got to have high standards and they've got to get C's or better, because if you don't get C's or better, you're not going to get a degree. Those are our basic focuses. We've also changed advising, which isn't part of this presentation, and Dr. Williams will have more to say about that in a minute. That said, what I'm going to talk about are programs that impact every single student on campus. Every single student, including males, which are very hard to impact sometimes. Okay? And when we look at the data, what we're going to see is that it doesn't matter whether you're a Pell Grant student, whether you're Hispanic, African American, male or female, part-time, full-time, whatever disaggregated cohort you're part of, we have seen improvements in student outcomes for every single one of those. More than that, the gaps in terms of going to class and staying in class are absolutely eliminated. Hispanic males, Pell Grant students, Anglos, males, females, everybody goes to class at a level of 95% or greater. 95% or greater who on census day are in class finish that class. The overall success rate for Odessa College, and now I'm talking every student, online, in face-to-face, hybrid, every student, every class, the average overall was 77% last year, which is 10% points over the national average. And every single student cohort, again, Pell Grant, et cetera, are all over the national average, all over 70%. And Hispanic males, by the way, are up to 75%. They've basically eliminated the gaps over the last 4 years. The signature program that has gained national attention and other things, but I don't want to highlight the fact that this is the only program there. The signature program is our drop rate improvement program that Dr. Williams and I put in place in 2011. And what I want to show you are the longitudinal data results from that program and show you the 4 years before the program started what the data looked like for all the college. And before I get to the data, let me tell you what the program is. This is the other thing that nobody's going to believe, actually. It's actually very simple. It doesn't cost you anything. It can be implemented instantaneously in one semester. You get all the results that I'm going to show you. And it comes out actually out of original research that we did at Odessa College. And that research was we had instructors who had very low dropout rates, and we had instructors with very high dropout rates. So I went and asked the low dropout rate instructors, so what do you do in your class? Just ask them two questions. What do you want for your students, and how do you accomplish that? And we're looking for commonalities. There were zero commonalities when it comes to how they taught and what they taught and the subject matters and all the rest of it. But in the intangible area of that connectivity between student and instructor, that's where the commonalities were, and there were 4 of them, which you see on the screen there in front of you. You got to talk to your students by name. And remember, folks, all these is treating your students basically the same way you would want to be treated. That's a core. Treat the students the same way you would want to be treated. Recognize them individually by name. Start that in the first day of class. Commit to recognizing any problems the student is having and interact and intercede immediately. Meet with the student, look them up face to face, eye to eye, at least once during the semester so you establish that connection. And then clearly have strong structured programs with clearly defined penalties if you miss assignments and so on and so forth. But use common sense and listen to the student. In other words, increase that connectivity. Starting with these 4 commitments, and this is what we started with the drop rate improvement program, you can see with the student course completion rates are over 95% for all students. Before the program, we were flattening out, and over the last 4 years, we've steadily increased it so that 95% of the students, and remember, these are all students, not just a cohort, all students complete the classes they start. Once they're in the classes and having better student-instructor connectivity, the instruction gets better, and so do the standards. And the outcome is phenomenal. After the drop rate improvement program, you can see that our student success rates, getting C or better, are soaring. For one disaggregated cohort, over 70% of our students are part-time. The gold ones are the full-time students, which you'd love to have. Their success rates are over 80% now. And then, of course, if you take care of these leading indicators, what is inevitably going to happen to these students who are staying in class and studying harder and doing better? What are you going to see? Improved graduation. The number of degrees awarded is soaring. And it all began with this gentleman to my left's vision of having the best community college in the nation.
Again, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us back. I think we were here a few years ago when this program was in its infancy and when we were trying to transform things at Odessa College. Commissioner Paredes has been a great friend to me and to Odessa College, allowing us to color outside the lines from time to time because we focus on being the best community college in the country. And some people think that that's lip service or that we're making things up as we go and we're trying to come up with some cliche area, but that's not the point. We look at everything, we question everything, we challenge everything. One of the more recent things that we did with the help of the coordinating board was to predominantly present our courses in the 8-week format as opposed to the 15 or 16-week format. And that has been phenomenal as well. We provide academic coaches for our students. We provide, and I can go on and on about the number of things we do. We require them to take the student success courses when they enter. And these things are working, and we're moving the needle. It's taken a lot of help and support. And as I was listening to the program, the presentation earlier from Sam Houston, it was very enlightening, and we are very respectful and appreciate what is going on there. And what we're trying to do with our programming is to involve each and every faculty member, and I think that's what makes us different. Each and every faculty member is charged with being a part of a program like what they're presenting, charged with finding out how can I make this student better in my classroom, regardless of the background, socioeconomic standing, regardless of what kind of car I'm going to drive home today. I need to make this student better. I need to work with this student, and we need to meet those challenges. And a number of things we try to do. We try to rethink education, as I mentioned. We challenge the status quo. We question everything that we do at the college and trying to see if we can do it better or more efficiently. Our goal is to increase enrollment. That continues to be important, but we also want to increase engagement. We know that each student is important. We also believe in taking risks. Some of them seem to be foolish. For example, when we talk about the 8-week courses, we were doing some phenomenal things, had received awards. But that transition was a transition at our core. And we had individuals who assist us and who help us with marketing telling us that's not something you want to do because those students might not sign up for the second 8-week session. You might lose enrollments. But since we put that program in place, we've broken all of our records for enrollment. And we were one of the few community colleges in West Texas who had growth during the last 2 years when things were very difficult. We believe in accountability for everyone, and we are committed to our students and our community. And we tell our community, you deserve to have the best community college in the country. You shouldn't settle for less. And that's what we want to give.
Yeah, David. So congratulations, a very impressive program, and congratulations on becoming the very best community college in the nation. And I wish you luck on becoming the very best in the galaxy. So my question to you in that regard is, have you tracked the academic and workforce success of your graduates? In other words, are you keeping track of the students as they move into completion of a baccalaureate degree or advanced degree, or how are they doing in the workforce? Clearly, you got success at the graduation level and the sustainability of their time on your campus, but how does this transfer so they're internalizing some of the things that they're modeling off what the faculty, personal relationships, I care about you, I want you to be successful, and are they doing that, and does it become a life model for them?
The answer is yes and yes, and Dr. Wood, he's chomping at the bit to help answer this question, and I'm sure he'll chime in.
I saw him chomping. I thought he had a puppy in his pocket.
I know. I'll mention a couple of things. Our students are highly sought after. They have high employment rates. They do really well when they transfer. They do better in many respects than the native students at the universities they transfer to. And one great example that I will add is that we received an award from Chevron, who we have a great partnership with, and we have we put an instrumentation program in place for them with automation to help with what their students needed, but it also served the entire oil industry. And these are students who can work in not only in our area but anywhere in the world once they get that credential. We received an honor of being one of the best partners they've ever had, and they awarded us. So that kind of thing, that kind of anecdotal information plus the data suggests to me that our students are doing very, very well, and they transition very effectively.
Let me add a point that I think is very, very important here. In our community, when you look at the ninth graders, there's about a 40 to 50% dropout rate before they get out of high school. The other aspect of the programs that we're offering is to try and keep them in school. Keep them in school. And when you talk about a workforce, we're losing 40 to 50%. The single most important statistic that we need to change out there is that dropout rate. And our career tech programs have grown over 400% over the last 3 years in our community, and the students that are pouring into these programs, graduating and coming, either getting a certificate and going on to work, or staying in school and getting an associate's and maybe a bachelor's degree, those are exactly the high-risk, high-profile students that we have lost in the past. So I think the other aspect of what we're doing, and I consider it one of the most important aspects we're doing, is providing programs that kids who otherwise would drop out love, stay in school, do well in, and become productive members of the workforce.
I'll add one more piece that we have. When you look at our exit exams or our exams in the healthcare areas, our students, many of them do 100%. Nursing fell short last time. They did 93%, our students exiting. So we use those metrics to demonstrate that not only are we engaging them and caring about them and all those things, but they have to perform. At the end of the day, they have to perform, and they're doing that at a very, very high level.
I've got a question. Dr. Williamson, you said instead of 12-week classes, 8-week class. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So your semesters are shorter. Is that what you're telling me?
No, our semesters are still the same, but we divide them into 2 sections of 8 weeks. You have a 16-week semester that almost everyone else has. So we split that so that you can have 2 8-week terms. So instead of taking 5 courses over a 16-week term, you might want to take 2 courses, 1 8-week section, and 3 the next, mixing and matching those to fit your life more effectively. Another thing that helps us, as we were talking to Dr. Paredes last night, is you get to bank that credit after 8 weeks. And so if life happens, if we have a downturn in the oil economy, or if we have an uptick in the oil economy, you've banked that credit every 2 months, which really is helpful for our students, and particularly disadvantaged students. Life happens to all of us, but the fewer resources you have, the more impacted you are when life happens. So we try to give our students every opportunity to bank that credit and then to move on. And one thing Dr. Wood didn't point out, he showed you those graduation rates. We've doubled the number of graduation ceremonies we're doing. And we're almost at a point where we have to start doing 3 on a Saturday. We were doing only 1. Now we're up to we're going to need 3, because the last time we were at near fire code problems because of families and people coming in. I mean, it's a celebration. The photos are beautiful. We could have done this slide simply by showing you, or this presentation by showing you our graduation.
Well, most of your students, 70% you said, are they come in the evening, or they're part-time student. Is that correct?
Well, some come in the evening as part-time. Some come during the day. Some come on. Some visit us online. Yes, as part. But many are part-time because they're working.
Yeah. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
John,
just a quick comment, Dr. Williams. I just admire your leadership. And I guess when you got there, you had discussions about goal setting, and I really love it that you came up with, our goal is to be the best community college, not in Texas or the Southwest, but in the nation. And anyway, just congratulations on this award.
Thank you. Thank you.
One last piece, what y'all were just talking about, the 8-week, and we were kind of all nodding up here. Is there anywhere else that's doing it that way?
We're having a number of visitors, and
like that would be of a lot of interest.
To us. Yes, we are. Yes, there are a number of colleges looking at it, and again, you have to give Dr. Paredes credit. He could have easily told us, no, that doesn't fit into the parameters of what we're trying to do. You can't do that. But what he told me on the phone, I was in our staff meeting, and I called him because many of our people and others across the state want to use the coordinating board as a reason why we can't do something. and I called him, and what he said to me was, he said, Greg, if it's something that will help improve education in our state, then I'll support you. And I don't know, Raymond, if you remember that, but that's what you told me. And we went for that. It was outstanding. We also have we have one of the first early college technical high schools in the country. Those 4 that were started in Texas, and we're the smallest one. I mean, in terms of our size of our community, but I think they saw in us a vision of trying to be outstanding, and they were able to support us. So we owe the coordinating board and Dr. Paredes quite a bit in this journey.
I have a question. What is for both of you? What is the average size of a lower division course at Sam Houston State? Do you know the number?
30.
Yeah.
30.
30. And what's the average size of a course at Odessa College?
22.
Yeah.
Well, that 30 is unusual and obviously very attractive. But how do we replicate the Odessa College model at universities where the average class size for lower division courses is 60, 70, 80, 100? How do you learn the names of all the students, and how do you find a way to meet every one of those students individually? Because obviously we'd like to recommend the expansion of this kind of approach statewide.
Besides a good memory, it would be very difficult in the large classes, I would think, because some classes are at some universities up to 300. So I don't really know how you would do that. Of course, the smaller classes are much more attractive to most students.
Yeah, you could do it at the upper division where classes tend to be much smaller, but that might be too late.
I went to undergraduate University of Washington and attended courses with 300 students and the like, and couldn't stand it because nobody ever paid any attention. The way you really do it is if you do have the names of students, and you can ask them, like when you're interacting with them, if you show that you're interested in knowing them, calling them by name, so that when a student is called out, and maybe you as a lecturer, et cetera, calls them out, it's the spirit of it. The students will respond to the spirit of it as well as the exact, because obviously you're not going to know the names of every kind of student. But when you walk up to somebody that you don't know and you say, well, sorry, what's your name or whatever, and you call them by name, you look them in the eye, again, try to just approach it the way you would sort of any kind of thing. And the students will respond to that, because you're showing you want to make a connection. You want to do that. So it will work even in a larger class.
And in those environments where you have to have larger classes, there are ways to have additional personnel come into those classes and help you to make that connection. There are ways to do that. It's going to cost a bit more money, but I think it would be much more effective if we had more people deployed.
And the president of UNT had me come up, and I spent time with their faculty and stuff, and we worked through that, and they had great ideas. I mean, once you get the idea in your head, you want to try this, and then you start looking at the realities of what you face, et cetera. People are smart. They'll come up with the practical ways to figure it out if the leadership wants them to.
Yeah. You know, this is not the first time, as President Williams pointed out, this is not the first time we've had these two institutions as exemplars of promoting student success. The SAM Center has been a model for the rest of the state and the country since you started it. And I look at the data, and I compare the data to the success rates at Sam Houston State for comparable institutions, not only in Texas but around the country. And the success, you're about 10 points higher in terms of retention and completion rates compared to peer institutions. And what Odessa College is doing is quite remarkable. The point is, we know how to do it. We know how to do it. We just have to make sure every institution in the state is modeling programs like the ones you all have established and helping students succeed at similar levels.
And when and again, let me continue to honor you and congratulate you. When you all do this, we were talking about the honor and what comes with this. Actually, what you're doing is you give cover to those others who really want to try some things like this and who really want to be innovative and take a chance when you by honoring us. And please know that our doors are open, and we accept all visitors, and we try to walk them through everything that we do, because our goal is not only to transform Odessa College, but we want to transform education and higher education. That's our goal.
And you had asked about the point of the university business model. Getting an award isn't the point. the point is trying to get the word out that this is an approach that that's accessible to others. Okay, where at least in our approach, you can do it within the existing budgets. You don't need a whole ton of money, et cetera. What you need is a change in culture or a change in approach, and it will work.
You must have very dedicated professors, I can say that, because I may have some professors. They can hardly care to get in a class and get out.
And that's you're right with that, but that's not a good thing.
That's not a good thing.
And I'll leave it with that.
Well said. Gentlemen, thank you all very much. Outstanding presentations and great work. All right, we're going to move to agenda item number 6, which are matters relating to the full board. Agenda item 4A is consideration of adopting the negotiated rulemaking committee's recommendation relating to the Applied Texas Advisory Committee. Gerald Booker, newly appointed Assistant Commissioner for College Readiness and Success, will provide a brief overview. And congratulations to your new appointment, Gerald. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you. And my reward is to present in front of you all today. It's my maiden voice. My name is Gerald Booker. I'm the Assistant Commissioner for College Readiness and Success. Thank you, Chairman Jenkins, members of the board. Agenda item 6A is consideration of adopting the Negotiated Rulemaking Committee's recommendation relating to the Applied Texas Advisory Committee. As you know, the Applied Texas is the state's statutory common admissions application. Public institutions are required to accept the application, and over 20 private institutions also use the application. As you all are familiar with the new negotiated rulemaking process, we're required to take all policies and rules related to admissions policies regarding the common application to negotiated rules. Most recently, we took the administrative rules for this advisory committee that were required to have for Applied Texas to negotiated rulemaking. The negotiated rulemaking committee had a number of amendments, but to give you a couple of highlights, they restructured the membership to add a membership for private institutions. They clarified the co-chair. We finally have a co-chair structure with a 2-year and 4-year. They also made a couple of statutory language changes to actually update language in the administrative rules. The last piece is we have something called the counselor suite, which you may not be aware of, that allows K-12 counselors to have access to their students' admissions information, whether they've applied or not. And this negotiated rulemaking process allowed the Applied Texas Committee to actually maintain the functionality of that counselor suite. During the 30-day comment period, we received no comments, and I asked for the board to move favorably for the adoption of these recommendations.
Move approval.
Motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Gerald, thank you very much.
Chairman, can I just?
Yes, sir.
I know we're rushing, but Mr. Ricker, are you new to the coordinating board?
I've been with the coordinating for about 3 years, and in my previous life, I was an associate commissioner at the Texas Education
I was interested in your background.
I've run a nonprofit. I've worked at the Maryland Higher Education Commission. I was a vice president and faculty at Coppin State University in Maryland, but I've been here in my role as a deputy assistant commissioner for the past 3 years.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Gerald.
you.
Agenda items 4B, C, and D were on the consent calendar, which we are going to go ahead and juggle just a little bit and move to agenda item 10, which are matters relating to the Committee on Agency Operations. And I will turn that over to the committee chair, Dr. David Tesher.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. During the AOC committee meeting yesterday, the committee members heard a report on grants and contracts, including those exceeding $1 million. We heard a review of the year-to-date fiscal year 2015 financial report. We received an update on the loan management system upgrade. And lastly, an update on internal audit and compliance monitoring reports and activities. None of these items require any action of the board. We did not have and do not have anyone registered for public testimony at this time. There is one last item which requires our consideration, and that is the AOC recommendation to the board to increase the commissioner's annual salary from $191,926 to $205,160 annually in accordance with the 2016-2017 General Appropriations Act, Section 3P3-40, effective 1 September 2015. This was passed by the legislature, and it requires us to take action on this. It was a unanimous recommendation from the AOC that the board approve this. So I'm going to require a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
And I have a motion and second. Any discussion?
It's well deserved.
Well deserved.
Yes. And it is. This is a particular item, Mr. Commissioner, that we want to express our consideration and our thanks and our gratitude for all that you've done. The board, before some of the members joined, and I think consistently has been trying to get the legislature understand the wisdom of their actions, and we're grateful for the wisdom of their actions. Without further ado, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This concludes the AOC committee agenda, sir.
Congratulations, Commissioner.
Thank you very much.
Not there. Great. All right. We'll move now back to Agenda Item 7, which are matters relating to the Committee on Affordability, Accountability, and Planning. Agenda Item 7B is public testimony on items relating to the Committee on Affordability, Accountability, and Planning. And we have public comments on one agenda item, and we'll hear them when we get to that section of the agenda. So we'll work through. Agenda Items 7C, D, and E were on the consent calendar that we approved earlier, and so that brings us down to Agenda Item 7F, which is a presentation on the preliminary head count for the fall 2015. Julie Eklund, Interim Assistant Commissioner for Strategic Planning and Funding, will provide the presentation, and this is for information only. Julie.
Good morning. Every fall, the Coordinating Board requests preliminary head counts from all of the state's public higher education institutions, as well as from the state's independent, private, and nonprofit institutions. The data are submitted to us after the 12th class day, and although the data are not certified, we get a pretty good estimate in this early head count. Historically, we see a drop of a few percentage points when the actual certified data comes in. And here are the preliminary counts. As you can see, enrollments are up about 31,000 students, with over 18,000 additional students at public universities and almost 10,000 additional students at community colleges. The greatest increases at publics were reported at Angelo State, A&M Commerce, UT Tyler, and A&M Central Texas. About 7 universities are down from last year's certified head count. We saw increases at community colleges at Coastal Bend, Midland, Collin County, and several more. We also ask institutions to report preliminary counts by race, ethnicity, and gender. Based on our preliminary data, we've seen the most increase in our Hispanic population, and this is a larger increase than we saw last year. We also have seen an increase in white enrollments for the first time in several years. African American enrollments show a slight drop, but our other category, which includes multiracial students, had a very large percentage increase. The male enrollments are up slightly, but not enough for us to be sure that this will hold true once the final data are certified. This slide shows the percentage change in enrollments since fall 2014 certified data. The Gulf Coast is the only area that, at least for this early head count, is down from last year. 2 of our largest community colleges in that area reported decreases. We thought it was kind of interesting when we saw this data to see the large increase in West Texas, an area where there's been an easing in the oil production, which may have reduced the demand for workers and perhaps resulted in some increased enrollments. I know also in other areas that I mentioned, some of those other community colleges where we saw large increases are in those types of areas. Community college preliminary enrollments, as I said before, are at almost 10,000 additional students from last fall. This is up for the first time after 3 years of decline. Last year, our preliminary enrollments showed a decline of 6,000 students. In the final enrollments, we were down 7,000 for community colleges. So with this level of growth coming in on the preliminaries, I'm pretty confident that we will see positive growth at community colleges for the first time in 3 years when we get our final data. And one reason we show this slide from all the way back to 1985 is that you can see that the shift and that the majority of our enrollments are at community colleges now and not at universities. And finally, where do these preliminary accounts leave us in terms of our Closing the Gaps participation goal of adding 630 additional enrollments from where we were in 2000? Well, these estimates bring us to about 614,000 students, and that's 97%, over 97% of the 630,000 goal. And basically, to get this estimate, we took the preliminary enrollments that I reported to you today, and we added the fall 2014 counts for career and flex as a proxy, because we won't get those career college data or the flex entry data, and those are the students who start in late fall, so we don't get their enrollments until spring. We'll get that information in the spring. We'll have our final certified data, and we'll be able to give you a final count next spring. So, in sum, we've seen steady growth at universities. It's been pretty steady throughout Closing the Gaps. Throughout that period, we've seen an encouraging upward trend in our community college enrollments. The downward trend that we've seen for the last few years appears to be reversing for white students. We saw large increases for Hispanic and other students compared to past years. We will do much additional analysis when we get our certified data, which will include additional elements coming in later this fall. We don't get a head count on puppies, but we will have a lot of other information that we can look at. And our final head counts will be available in the spring. And of course, we don't have a participation goal in our new 60 by 30 text plan, but strong participation levels matter. The pipeline is very important, so we'll continue to look at participation as we move forward. Thank you.
And so to that point, you will be providing that information, the participation like this, or will you?
Well, I think we will, I believe, continue to collect preliminary enrollments. I think it's important to know that information. I don't want to say that for sure, but if that's something that folks feel is important, yes. Yes, we will, for sure.
Thank you.
I should have just turned right back and looked. Yes, we will continue to do this.
Okay, Julie, thank you. Agenda item 7G is a report on facilities projects that were submitted to the coordinating board. Julie Eklund is available to answer any questions on any of those facilities reports. Does anyone have any to ask? Information only also.
Yeah, those two projects did meet our standards.
Okay. Agenda item 7H is discussion of draft legislative recommendations for the 85th Texas Legislature. John White, Director for External Relations, will provide an overview. This item is for discussion item only also.
Good morning.
Good morning, John.
As Chairman Jenkins mentioned, I'll be providing an update on where we stand with our legislative recommendations for the next session. As you know, the 85th Texas Legislature will convene in January of 2017. One thing to clarify up front, what I'm talking about today is our process for developing policy recommendations. We will have a separate but related process for developing our legislative appropriations request, which will include our agency budget request and our exceptional item requests. So that will be done in concert but separate from our policy recommendations. What you see on this slide is our timeline. As the Commissioner mentioned earlier today, originally we had a timeline that would have had us adopt legislative recommendations at the January board meeting. After the board retreat, External Relations met with many stakeholders at institutions and important offices to gauge their initial feedback on what had come out of the board retreat. And we got some very good feedback that I'll be sharing with you as we go along. But we also got some feedback that it might be a good idea for us to take some more time and really work with our stakeholders to identify what their perspectives are, what their concerns may be, where their priorities lie. We got some feedback from institutions that they really needed to talk to the folks back on their campus to understand what the implications of a recommendation may be. We got some feedback that for many of our stakeholders, they really hadn't turned their attention toward the next session yet. So after that discussion, the commissioner's recommendation was that instead of adoption at January, we have adoption at the April board meeting. The advantage of that is it does give us more time to work with our stakeholders to get their input and work with them to see if we can make adjustments to these recommendations if necessary that will incorporate their perspectives while still accomplishing what you want to accomplish with these recommendations. And in April, adoption does still put us ahead of where we typically are in terms of our legislative recs. Usually those go to the July board meeting. So what we've done here and what I'll present to you is we've taken those initial conceptual recommendations and we've grouped them thematically in terms of how they contribute to the goals of 60 by 30. And so our initial kind of theme is achieving the goals of 60 by 30 through the coordinating board's role and its specific responsibilities. And the idea here is to identify where are those areas in statute where we need to clarify or define the coordinating board's role such that we will be able to be best positioned to meet the goals of 60 by 30 text. And as the second point here is that we exercise our authorities and our responsibilities best when we work with those stakeholders to develop a mutually acceptable process to make sure that our stakeholders and the agency agree this is how we're going to adjudicate whatever issues come up. So under this kind of first banner, we have aligning institutional missions with the statewide plan. The idea being that we would ensure that institutions' missions, and we also discussed their strategic plans, would reflect what we need in order to be able to accomplish 60 by 30 text. The feedback we got from institutions was that no one's opposed to 60 by 30 text. Everybody, in fact, is pretty enthusiastically for 60 by 30 text. There was concern that developing missions and strategic plans is a very involved process for the institutions. They involve a lot of their internal stakeholders. And so they wanted to make sure that in incorporating 60 by 30 into that process, it wasn't a matter of they go through all this work and then there's just kind of a veto at the end. So we're right now working on potentially legislation that would instruct institutions to align their plans with 60 by 30 text, as opposed to having a kind of a veto at the end. The next issue is off-campus sites. As you know, institutions offer instruction in a number of different venues that are off of their main campus. These include MITSEs, branch campuses, and other sites. As these sites are being considered, it's very important that the coordinating board have a role in making sure that they do not contribute to unnecessary duplication of services. So what we have discussed with our stakeholders is clarifying first definitions of what these different sites are. The current statute and the stakeholders agree is pretty vague as to what these definitions are. We want to clarify the time frame for the coordinating board to review and approve courses and programs of study at these sites. Currently, there's really no defined time frame for when an institution has to bring their programs to the coordinating board for review. We want to make sure that there is time for that to be an effective review before the campus is expected to open. And we want to consider a process for the agency to examine off-campus facilities to make sure that we're able to identify and flag facilities that may be duplicative of existing facilities. In our discussions with the initial feedback from institutions, they agreed that the statute was vague and needed to be updated. I think that they are interested in working with us in terms of avoiding duplication. The devil's going to be in the details in terms of how exactly that process is going to be structured. Again, a good argument for taking some more time to work with institutions to make sure that we have a mutually agreed process. And then under coordinating board roles and responsibilities, we're looking at potentially a recommendation on career schools and colleges, ensuring that we have the clear, proper authority regarding compliance with accrediting bodies, federal financial rules, and statutes. We also want to have the coordinating board establish, and this is something the career schools very much favor, a repository for transcripts so that those career colleges that go out of business, their students will be able to receive their transcript from us so that they can transfer to another institution. Kind of our next bundle of recommendations follow under achieving the goals of 60 by 30 text through student financial aid programs. Obviously, Texas Grant and TEOG are our primary state financial aid programs for universities and community colleges, and they contribute very strongly to our 60 by 30 goals. We're considering a recommendation that would raise the EFC for both of these programs, the expected family contribution, so that more middle-income students would be served. This is a result of two programs being repealed by the legislature, the Be On Time program and the Top 10% program. Those two programs provided financial aid to more middle-income students, and we don't have a program currently that really serves that population. So the idea here is to use our existing programs and just raise the income eligibility. At the same time, we would limit grant awards to tuition fees and books. And I will tell you the feedback we got, particularly from, our institutions was, the fundamental issue here is going to be funding. And that any change you make to these programs, if they aren't adequately funded, aren't going to have a large impact in making sure that students are served. We also have a recommendation to make summer students eligible for Texas Grant and TEOG, and that's been pretty positively received by all quarters. We do have a recommendation that's specific to Texas Grant, which is to limit grant recipients to 135 semester credit hours. Currently, students are eligible for 150 hours of Texas Grant. The idea here is that we want to do two things. We want to incent students to complete their degrees in a timely fashion. Your typical undergraduate degree program is 120 hours, so 135 gives them another full semester beyond degree requirements. And also to make funding available that would have gone to those students at 150 hours, make that funding now available to those students who are earlier in their college career. This idea has been, again, fairly positively received. Some of the comments that we received on this one, there was some concern about programs that require more than 120 hours. There are some degree plans that go beyond 120 hours, and the recommendation was made, well, instead of saying 135 hours, let's look at 15 hours beyond your degree requirements, which should have the same impact. And so that's an option that we're examining right now. There was some concern about those students who are at that 135 to 150 right now. Would there be some level of grandfathering for students who are in there right now? And a general concern of, these are students who, particularly might be close to graduation. And do we want to really focus, are we in some ways undermining their ability to finally complete? So again, we thought that was an important point worthy of further discussion. We have a recommendation for the Texas Educational Opportunity Grant to make students enrolled in a community college baccalaureate program eligible for 135 semester credit hours. That would align with what we're proposing for Texas Grant, and it would just be for students in baccalaureate programs. Currently, you can only receive TEOG for 75 hours. We have a recommendation for TEG, which serves our independent colleges and universities. Currently, this is the only program that allows graduate students to receive grants. Our recommendation, given that the student debt goal in 60 by 30 text is undergraduate only, is to have that program only available to undergraduate students. And we have spoken to the independent colleges and universities, and they wanted some more time to talk to their people and get us some additional feedback on that. Work study mentorship program is simply a recommendation to change the allowable use of funds. Currently, those funds can only be used to support student access. We'd like them to support programs that contribute to student success, such as advising and tutoring. That's been fairly positively received. And we have a recommendation that financial aid award notifications should include information not only on maximum loan amounts that students may take, but also a recommended amount so that they can, based on their individual EFC, based on the institution's cost of attendance, see a number that the institution says, this is what we think you can get by on, so that they're not automatically taking out the most debt that they can. And I think some of the, that's been well received. I think some of the concern is just making sure that they have a clearly defined process in terms of how that's going to be calculated. Will it be calculated individually by the institutions? Will there be some guidance as to how that's going to be done statewide? Something that needs to be clarified. Outcomes-based funding. This is something that the board has very strongly supported in the past. It's very important to our attainment and completion goals in 60 by 30. I mean, the feedback we've gotten from stakeholders up to this point is they want to see, what's going to actually come out of the formula advisory committees. So as you know, right now, the general academic and career and technical college formula advisory committees are considering what they want to recommend in terms of student outcomes. So once those recommendations are in hand, we'll probably have a lot more input from the institutions. And that we have a recommendation, and I should mention, these two fall under our idea of achieving the goals of 60 by 30 text through higher education funding policies. And the second recommendation involves formula funding for returning adult students. Currently, there are a number of restrictions on formula funding, such as the 6-drop rule, which says that after you drop 6 courses, you can't be funded for your next drop. The 3-peat rule that says the third time you take the same course, you can't be formula funded for it. Well, the issue we have with returning adult students is many of them have come up against those blocks because of a perhaps unsuccessful earlier academic career. And we want to create incentive both for them to return and for institutions to focus on helping that population come back to school and complete their degree. And then some of these will look very familiar to you. Community college baccalaureates. We do initially want to reoffer our community college baccalaureate recommendation, which would have allowed some community colleges to offer baccalaureates in nursing and applied science, subject to certain restrictions. We think it's important for achieving our goals of 60 by 30 techs on attainment and completion. The feedback we've gotten from institutions is, they want to make sure that they understand what the data is. They want to see the data that shows that the nursing shortage, the baccalaureate credentialed nursing shortage, continues to be a problem. And that's certainly a fair request and gets into one of our later asks. And make sure that we're basing this on the best data possible. There is a recommendation to prioritize graduate medical education over the establishment of additional medical schools. So that's in really trying to get some indication from the legislature that their focus is on additional residency slots as opposed to creating new medical schools. And so we'll be working with institutions in the legislature on what's the best way to do that. One thing also to clarify on this is, and this was a question of institutions, this is not backward looking, this is forward looking. So we're not talking about institutions that are currently in the pipeline. We're talking about additional institutions that might be found in medical schools. There was a recommendation that actually came out of our board retreat on conducting a healthcare workforce study. We're actually looking at current statute. There was a requirement passed in SB 18 that did require a healthcare workforce study. So we're looking at what the requirements are of that and how it might match with what we want to accomplish here at the agency. So we've had some conversations with other agencies about what that study is going to look like, and we'll report that back to you. And then the statewide preceptorship program, the recommendation was to update statute to include family medicine, which we understand is the intent, but is not clear in statute. And then these final things we're thinking about are considering how to ensure that early college, high schools, and dual credit provide college-level instruction. Again, making sure that these programs that award college credit really are college-level work. We're looking at expanding statute or updating statute to expand the advisory committee for the Applied Texas system, as well as to reflect that system's current capabilities. And finally, we have a recommendation. There are currently 2 requirements in statute for the state to generate a list of low college-going high schools, and they have slightly different methodologies, so we want to collapse that into a single list with a single methodology. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, Mr. White, thank you for that presentation. It's outstanding, as always.
Thank you.
And frequently through it, you mentioned that you were getting feedback from institutions, and I know that's good. But tell me how that goes. Are you having meetings with people? Is it through email? Or tell me about that process of getting the feedback.
Certainly. And actually, we, after the board retreat, the external relations team set up meetings with all of the university system GR offices, the independent institutions, TAC, ICUT, representatives of career colleges, to go through the preliminary recommendations and get their initial feedback. And, we got some good feedback, which I shared with you, but, we also understand that for these governmental affairs representatives, they have folks back on their campus they really need to talk to make sure that they understand what the implications of a recommendation are, what tweaks they might want to make to the recommendation. And then we also need to fully engage our legislative stakeholders, our business community stakeholders. So we've got a lot of work to do in terms of not only broadening who we talk to, but having a deeper dive on these and really getting from them, from our stakeholders, what is it that we can maybe agree upon might be a good change to this that still accomplishes what the board wants to accomplish.
In a way, your feedback, would you characterize it as preliminary? Because you're having these meetings, they're giving you feedback, but they're saying, look, this is not my final word on it. I have to go back to my institution, talk
Absolutely,
with
Mr. Steen. It's a first blush of, here's, based on our knowledge of our institutions, what we see, but we really need to get you something more substantive, and we need to have time to do that.
Sounds like you've had a lot of meetings since
we have, sir.
Thank you for all that work.
Thank you.
Just to amplify what John said, we also, I regularly get calls from presidents about certain issues. We just received a letter from the University of Texas system regarding some proposed changes in the way we evaluate proposals for doctoral programs. We will respond to that. I regularly make campus visits. In the past couple of weeks, I've visited West Texas A&M and Canyon. I was at Tyler Junior College last week. I'm going to the University of Houston, Texas Southern, Dallas Community College. I meet with administrators, faculty, and students and get input from them about what they like or don't like about higher education in Texas. I make regular presentations to the Council of University Presidents and Chancellors, get a lot of input that way. I meet with community college faculty occasionally, and so we have a lot of different ways to interact with the stakeholders, and we want to expand that, actually.
David? Yeah, John, good report. Thank you. Just want to clarify something, and I think it may be in more style and substance. When you talked about the GME, UME disparity that we have, where we're kind of flipping to the point where we're creating more graduates of our MDDO programs than we have GME, I think you may have intimated, and maybe the folks back home may have misunderstood, that somehow those that existed now would not have a role in solving this problem. I think we need to say that everyone has to be all in on this, because the vast majority of those new positions that will be created are those that already have a certificate of authority. And I would certainly think that the sentiment down at the legislature is we're not going to open up new additional medical schools or expand those that already exist until we're certain that we're actually investing in enough GME slots for every Texas graduate to have a Texas residency. Because the studies that we've done here and others have done conclusively show that the investment, the big, heavy investment, is in the UME, but the real way to get the physician workforce for tomorrow is in the GME. And those states that enjoy a lot of spots for GME, traditionally New York and California is the model, have no problem with their workforce, whereas we're growing, they're not growing, we are, and we've got challenges. So I just, for the record, I want to make sure that we're saying everyone in the medical pipeline has a role, including those that currently exist. And the challenge has been, and our marker's always been 1.1 to 1. We want 110 spots for every 100 spots in residency so that we can import people who have graduated from medical schools in other states. And I think that's probably what you meant, but I just wanted to make sure that it was stated for that way.
I appreciate that clarification, Dr. Tischer. And yes, the idea here is to get the legislature to be clear about where the priorities lie.
Yes. And I think our legislature has been very good at responding to this, and we need to do more this session, so I appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions of John? Christina?
Thank you for your thorough work and presentation. I have a small logistics question. You had mentioned limiting the funds for the TEOG, for the EFC for tuition and books only. How is that? How will the board know, since each class has different costs for textbooks? How will that be implemented?
Well, I think that is part of what needs to be kind of defined with the recommendation. Again, we're still at a fairly conceptual stage of it. But the idea is that, and this is part and parcel to the recommendation of increasing the EFC cap, so that we'll be expanding eligibility. At the same time, we need to kind of rein in costs. So the idea is saying that by limiting it to tuition fees and books at that institution, and the institutions do define, they have calculations to show what those costs are, we're helping make sure that the grant amount doesn't kind of exceed what's necessary for a student to complete.
The logistics are still coming.
To be determined.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, John, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, agenda item 7I1 is consideration of adopting the committee's recommendation to the board relating to Chapter 21, new subchapter P concerning the loan repayment program for mental health professionals. We have two individuals who have registered to provide public testimony on this agenda item. I would like to invite them up to the table, as well as Lisa Muller, the Director of Loan Repayment Programs. Before we hear public testimony, I'd like for Lisa to go ahead and provide background information on this item. So, Lisa, I'll turn it over to you, and then we'll go and have the public comment.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Senate Bill 239 authorized a new student loan repayment program for mental health professionals, and $2.12 million was appropriated for the program for the biennium. The statute requires that the board adopt administrative rules for the program by December 1st, 2015, and these rules have been recommended to you for adoption by the Committee on Affordability, Accountability, and Planning. The rules very closely mirror the statute and include additional language regarding eligible loans and definitions that are modeled after our other loan repayment programs. During the 30-day comment period, we received one comment from the University of Texas at Austin recommending clarification of language relating to eligible loans and services to Medicaid or CHIP enrollees rather than Medicaid and CHIP enrollees, and we incorporated those suggestions into these rules. On Tuesday afternoon, we first learned of concerns about the definition of full-time service, which you'll hear about in a few moments from the folks sitting to my right. And although this definition is in place for our other programs that include certain mental health professionals, we recognize that those programs do not include licensed clinical social workers and licensed professional counselors. So we'll gladly work with the representatives who are here today and others to discuss the underlying issues and perhaps recommend an amendment for your consideration at the January board meeting.
Okay. So
I have a question. So did the legislation itself specify psychologist, or it did not say licensed clinical social workers?
There are, I believe, 5 different mental health professional types that are authorized. That's psychiatrists, psychologists, licensed clinical social workers. There's a little bit of differentiation between those who have received a doctoral degree related to social work or licensed professional counselor if the counselor has received a doctoral degree. Advanced practice registered nurse who works in the behavioral nurses.
Right.
And licensed clinical social workers and licensed professional counselors.
Ms. Mulder, it sounds like you're saying that the people here today that you want to take into account their input and come back to us. Is that correct?
That's correct. And, of course, the Department of State Health Services will be consulted. The rule that's in place was originally modeled after a rule in the National Health Service Corps loan repayment program. But we definitely want to hear what the folks' concerns are and make any changes that may be necessary.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I know we're trying to move the meeting along. Does this mean that we would just?
I think we're doing pretty well on time right at the moment, John. So let's go ahead and let each of them take their allotment on the public comment period, please.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Will Francis, and I'm representing the Texas chapter of the National Association of Social Workers. We would like to thank THECB for their hard work adopting rules related to loan repayment and feel that the rules lay out a clear and equitable process for applicants to follow. However, we do have some concerns about the requirement that an applicant be employed as a full-time employee at 32.5 hours. The bill itself does not make any mention of full-time status, and while we do understand that the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board wants to ensure that those receiving loan support are seeing clients and working at the agency an appropriate number of hours, there may be different requirements at different organizations, or a person may have their duties spread out over a variety of tasks that do not allow 32.5 hours of direct patient care. If they perform any other functions at the agency, spending over 3/4 of their time with clients may be challenging. We would rather see language that leaves a responsibility for determining hours up to the state agency, center, nonprofit, etc., such as full-time employment as defined by the employing agency that meets the specified number of hours required by the agency for direct patient care, documentation, supervision, organizational meetings, and continued education. The agency will define these hours based upon the reasonable workload of each direct care professional in the agency setting. 20 to 25 hours per week of direct care is reasonable for a therapist in an office, and 32.5 hours may be challenging for the therapist or counselor if they are making home visits, particularly in a rural area. We feel that this number is slightly restrictive for patient care settings and complications presented by Medicaid and CHIP clients. While a physician with a full support team could complete 32.5 hours of patient care, mental health workers are quite different and usually have multiple roles within an agency and often work with many clients outside the therapeutic setting. The proposed rules currently allow anyone working between 20 to 32.5 hours to receive prorated loan reimbursement. We recommend that the 20 hours be considered the minimum amount necessary with the specific hours of direct client service over that to be determined by the agency according to their needs. And additionally, the rules, as currently laid out in 21.4935A, require that an applicant agree to work with Medicaid or CHIP clients. Yet under Section 21.495, there is no requirement that a provider actually see such clients. The rules for physicians, which appear to be the template for the proposed rules for mental health providers, do contain such a stipulation under the corresponding Section 21.2561CA, and we encourage the board to ensure that clients with the highest need are being seen by applicants. Otherwise, we are concerned that this will not meet all the requirements of the statute. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present today, and I would just like to say that the board has been, the staff of the board has been incredibly open to our input and really working with us.
Ms. Fries?
Yes, thank you. Congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you.
On your microphone.
Oh, I asked him to, and then I forgot. For the record, my name is Jan Fries, and I represent the Texas Counseling Association, which represents more than 7,000 professional counselors in an array of work settings across the state of Texas. I really appreciate the opportunity to testify today. I would like to apologize that TCA did not submit written comments when this rule was posted in the Texas Register back in July. I was out of the state at the time for a couple of weeks, and I just completely missed it. This program is a really high priority for the Texas Counseling Association. We worked closely with the Senator Schwertner in its adoption and its composition. We testified in support because we think that this is going to be an enormous benefit to address the challenges that Texans are facing in accessing mental health services across the state because of the acute shortage in mental health professionals. We're asking you to consider two options to modify this rule. The first is that you add a definition of direct patient or client care that will recognize that the direct patient or client care provided by mental health professions is broader than time spent with clients. We talk about this because time spent with clients is how the rules that regulate the licensed professional counselors adopted by the State Board of Examiners for Professional Counselors. That's how they define it as time spent with clients. In my written testimony, I've provided a definition that is used by the Veterans Administration and more accurately incorporates the range of services that encompass direct client care specifically for mental health professionals. We also ask that you consider reducing the number of hours included in this definition from 32.5 to a more reasonable standard of 20 to 25 hours per week. The modification of simply inserting of the 32.5 hours, no less than 21 hours must be in direct client care, would align with the definitions that are promulgated by the National Health Service Corps for mental health professionals, and I've provided that resource in my written testimony as well. We completely appreciate the goal of uniformity in the rules governing the loan repayment programs that you administer. There are significant differences, however, in the structure and delivery of services by physicians and those delivered by mental health professionals. And in this case, the uniformity may have the unintended consequence of forcing a practice structure for mental health professionals who need this program that does not align with best practice or deliver the best outcomes for their clients. Mental health professionals who qualify for this program are working in really, really very strenuous situations, working in the criminal justice system and working with Medicaid populations. And I can assure you that the challenges of working in those service systems mean that they work far more than even 40 hours per week. But to ask them to dedicate 32.5 hours in face-to-face direct contact with very challenging client populations is very unreasonable and potentially dangerous for the outcomes. The changes that we're asking for today, we believe, align with the legislative intent of this program, which is to expand access to mental health professionals. We think that this will encourage more mental health professionals to agree to participate and work with these difficult populations. And I'm so happy to hear Lisa say that they're happy to work with us. We really look forward to working with you on implementing this program going down the road. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. John?
Again, Counselor, if we want to delay it till January, which is what you want us to do, is that correct?
That's what we're...
So we do, is it a motion to table? Is that...
The statute requires that rules be adopted by December 1st.
I've got something else to add.
Yeah.
So, I appreciate the testimony that we're receiving here, and I understand that there's reasons why we didn't receive it before, but it seems to me that we ought to adopt the rule that was published, and we can come back in January and amend it if we find that out.
And I think that's what Lisa's...
Yeah, I'm a little concerned that if we try to amend this on the fly, that we may not be consistent with our notice provisions. And we really haven't done enough due diligence to really understand exactly that. I guess my question would be, if the counselors are not actually doing client care, preparing charts, reviewing notes, being prepared for the next counseling session is a form of client care. It's not direct face-to-face time, but it is a form of client care. Am I just misunderstanding this?
Can I answer that?
Go ahead.
I would direct you to the final paragraph on the first page of my written testimony, in which the Veterans Affairs system defines it as providing direct clinical care, time spent in reviewing patient data, counseling about patient care with colleagues, reviewing medical literature, and contacting the patient or caregivers to discuss their needs. I think, if I could speak for social workers as well, an important part of the work that the clinical social workers do with clients is also system support, identifying what resources are out there, making sure that they get those resources. So it's way more than just the face-to-face.
Right. So if we adopted the 5 points you made there, and I would say if we're dealing with a rural environment, travel to a client ought to be the sixth one there. Because especially our rural areas, I know that's a very chronic and acute need. But if we adopted that and still left the 32.5, that would still be consistent with the pattern and practice of your healthcare professionals, right?
If I could, if that's okay, well, I'm sorry. To tell you the truth, I would actually prefer, and I think it would align with Will's testimony, that you modified the 32.5 to say that you have to work a minimum of 32.5 hours, no less than 21 hours must be in direct client care. Because rather than stipulate the array of indirect services that they provide, I think that has to be done in the context of the system in which that mental health professional is working. But if you set it at the 21, it also then very neatly aligns with the language that is in the rules for the National Health Service Corps loan repayment programs. So you would have consistency here in Texas with the national program.
Mr. Chairman, I guess my question is, I would be inclined to move that we adopt what has been published in the Texas Register today and then ask our staff to work with these fine folks and bring us something back at our next meeting that we may be able to amend that.
And that's what I'm looking to Bill and to Linda as to, is that kind of what y'all were thinking about, and Lisa, kind of what you were intimating, that we pass this, but that we recognize the concerns and work toward an amendment? Is that?
That's correct. And, because we're statutorily required to adopt rules by December 1, we would recommend that you adopt the rules as is. They go into effect 20 days after today. We won't be able to post any amendments until after that 20-day takes effect, which means that we will miss the posting to meet the CAP meeting on December 11th. So if you're okay with these amendments not going to the CAP meeting, but going ahead and going to the January board meeting, we can do that.
I don't have a problem with that. Board members?
I move adoption.
I second. And Ms. Freeze and, I'm sorry, Mr. Francis, okay with you?
Yes. We really thank you so much for your flexibility.
So what we have then is a motion and a second to adopt. Any other discussion? All right. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. All right, so I think we have a plan that will get us to where we all want to be.
Thank you so much.
For the amendments. Okay, agenda item 7I2 is a consideration of adopting the committee's recommendation to the board relating to Chapter 21, new subchapter R, concerning the dental education loan repayment program. Lisa, are you? You're available. You're available for questions from back there. Okay.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, great. Thank you. All right, so now we will go ahead and, Janelle, press forward and go ahead and move to agenda item 9, matters relating to the Committee on Academic Workforce and Success. Janelle.
Hello. Yes, we're ready to begin. I don't believe there's any public testimony. All right. So we do not have anyone registered to testify. So we'll go to item 9C, consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the board relating to a request from the Texas State Technical College Board of Regents to accept a donation of land in Fort Bend County and placing the land into the educational and general buildings and facilities inventory. This did not go to the cause committee, so this is a new item. Rex.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Texas Education Code does allow the Texas State Technical College system to accept donations of land or facilities in the name of the state of Texas in those counties in which it operates, or has permission to establish a campus or an extension center. And so what we have in front of us is a result of the 84th Legislature and House Bill 658 authorized the TST campus in Fort Bend County. And so a number of organizations in Fort Bend County, community organizations, and I believe the county was also involved in this to some extent, have all come together to donate a parcel of land comprising of 40 acres for TSTC to build a site. And so what they are requesting is that the board approve that particular parcel of land be added to their inventory of educational and general buildings and facilities. And Mike Reeser, as the chancellor of the TST system, is here to answer any questions you may have about it.
Sounds like a good deal to me.
Move approval.
Since the chancellor came to our meeting, should we ask him to come forward and say a few words?
A second.
I'll second.
Yeah, thank you. That's happy to hear from him.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Commissioner, and members. Congratulations, Mr. Chairman, on your recent appointment. We've had an operation in Fort Bend County for about 13 or 14 years. It was a very small program extension. And several years ago, community leaders came to us and said, we'd like to expand the availability of technical ed in Fort Bend County. And so they called us to the table with Wharton County Junior College, and we worked out a 75-year contract in which the two respective schools would focus on various training areas that the community needed. And then based on that contract, the community mobilized to help TSTC put this campus in Fort Bend County. And a point of clarification is there's actually two 40-acre tracts that'll be involved in the campus. It's located right on US 59, just west of the intersection of Highway 36. So the total campus will be more or less 81 acres or so. The tracts are provided to TSTC in two sections because major contributors in the process are foundations who have annual gift limits. And so the gift limits were done in 2 calendar years, meaning one this year and one next year. And that's why there's two tracts that actually make up one campus. We believe
who
that
donated
campus,
them to you?
I'm sorry?
Who's doing the donating? These tracts are...
We have a confidentiality agreement.
Oh, you do?
But we do. I can tell you foundations, economic development corporations, the cities and the counties. This campus is literally located in Rosenberg, Texas. But both Richmond and Rosenberg and the county were involved in helping raise a total of about $40 million of cash and in-kind donations.
Congratulations. Do we have any other discussion? All in favor say aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you so much for coming. Agenda item 9D is a consideration of adopting the committee's recommendation to the board relating to a request from Baptist Hospitals of Southeast Texas of Radiological Technology for a third certificate of authority to grant degrees in Texas. Dr. Peebles.
Thank you. The Baptist Hospitals of Southeast Texas operate a school of radiologic technology. They are seeking their third certificate of authority while they seek accreditation elsewhere. They're seeking accreditation from the Accrediting Bureau of Health Education Schools. Their program has already been accredited by the Joint Review Committee on Education and Radiologic Technology. These institutions can operate for up to 8 years or 4 certificates of authority while seeking accreditation from a coordinating board-approved accrediting body.
Need a motion?
I move approval.
Second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion, comment?
Disclosure, I'm a former president, chief of the medical staff of that institution, and have been a longtime board member, no longer a board member. So I just wanted that to be disclosed.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Item 9E is consideration of adopting the committee's recommendation to the board relating to a request from Southwest School of Art for a second certificate of authority to grant degrees in Texas. Dr. Peoples.
So the Southwest School of Art in San Antonio, Texas, was originally created as a Southwest Crafts Center in 1965, and in 2010, it shortened its name to the Southwest School of Art. It provides a lot of community and sort of continuing education programs, but it also offers a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree, and it is seeking its second certificate of authority with us to continue operation while they continue to seek accreditation. They're seeking accreditation from the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools Commission on Colleges, better known as SAC-COC, and they are also seeking accreditation from the National Association of Schools of Art and Design.
So move.
Second.
We have a
Dr.
motion
Peoples, is
and
there
a
anybody
second.
here from this institution?
No, sir.
Any discussion or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion passes. Agenda item 9F1 is consideration of adopting the committee's recommendation to the board relating to a request for a new degree program from Texas A&M University for a Master of Science degree with a major in energy. Dr. Peoples.
Thank you. The proposed program with a major in energy is an interdisciplinary program that really tries to introduce students to all facets of the energy industry and prepare them for leadership and management positions within that industry. As best we can tell, there is indeed a workforce demand for these kind of degrees. There is only one other institution in the state of Texas that offers such a program, and we do have two folks from Texas A&M University who can answer any further questions you might have, Dr. Chris Flautas and Dr. Stratos Pistakopoulos. And I hope I pronounced those somewhat correctly.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Hello, gentlemen. I see you. We had a nice discussion at our committee meeting.
Yes.
There was. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice to see you again.
Mm-hmm.
Good morning.
Any questions?
Who are the potential employers of your graduates? What sorts of companies, if you can name them, as well as note the field?
Energy is a multifaceted domain that has components from traditional oil and gas. It also has renewable components. It has hydro as well as geothermal. It has nuclear engineering. It has materials for energy. It has smart grid. It has really a plethora of components. And what we provide in a very detailed analysis in a document of 450 pages, detailed information about Texas for specific employment opportunities. Obviously, some of the renewable resources components will not have the same level of opportunity as in the oil and gas, which is a traditional, actually, industry in Texas in particular. But we have to say about the horizon, not for the next 5 years, but for the next few decades. Right. And therefore, we have to project into the future, and we need to educate the new leaders in energy so as to be prepared to have transitions between the jobs, to have options to select the different domains of their expertise. So it is an opportunity for everybody to pursue that, and all the sectors have been documented in this document specifically. So, of course, oil and gas is the predominant and will remain the predominant sector, but you have a lot of materials-related companies that can also enter the picture. Companies that are related to solar and wind could enter the picture as well. Of course, nuclear engineering, it is a traditional domain that has a 6 to 7% actually in the country. Therefore, looking sort of globally, we need to prepare the new leaders for energy properly, not in a unilateral, monolithic way, but with a multifaceted way.
And if I may add, there is also the international dimension, and we already have seen signs that there is a lot of demand on the international scale for people who have a panoramic view of the various dimensions of energy. So we create, in a way, new educational paradigm, which we put also in the marketplace.
So yesterday was Back to the Future Day. Can you give us an update on the development of the flux capacitor and your study of that? I don't know if that's fair, because maybe you've never seen that movie, but I think everybody else in the audience has.
I missed the movie, so I cannot do that.
I believe we have a motion and a second. Okay.
I have a comment. After the committee meeting when you all presented, I mentioned the idea of your program to several different engineering students and engineers, asking if this would be something that they would be excited about, and they unanimously said yes.
Thank you. We have had a modest objective, starting with the first year with 20 students and reaching actually a steady state of about 40 to 50. But we would very much welcome indicators like the ones that you pointed out. When we gave a presentation to the Energy Club, which is a club at the Texas A&M University that consists of undergraduate students and master students, they wanted to find a way to secure positions. So we hope that the outcome would be as positive, but we're modest at our expectations.
Congratulations on your institute.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commission, board, we're ready for a vote?
Yes.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good luck with your program. It's important to Texas.
Actually, for Texas A&M University, and of course for Texas.
Agenda item.
I knew the A&M part, yeah.
Everyone feel good.
Agenda item 9F is consideration of adopting the committee's recommendation to the board relating a request for a new degree program from Texas A&M University Texarkana for a Doctor of Education degree with a major in education leadership. Dr. Peebles.
Thank you. The EDD in educational leadership would actually be the first doctoral program at Texas A&M University Texarkana. It has, for several years, been a part of a cooperative doctoral program with TAMU Commerce. And Commerce has gone to a completely online program, while students in Texarkana tend to favor a hybrid that has at least some face-to-face component. And so they would like to split the program. There is an established workforce need there in that region of Texas, there are only 3% of existing superintendents and principals have a doctoral degree in education. This is also the only institution within 100 miles that offers the program as well. And we have two folks from Texas A&M University Texarkana, Dr. Glenda Ballard and Dr. Roseanne Stripling are here to answer any questions you might have about the program.
All right, board.
When I was in Tyler last week, I was struck by the data on educational attainment in Northeast Texas, and it is very low. It's comparable or even more disappointing than the Rio Grande Valley. So this is something that we believe you all need.
Hi, Dr. Stripling. How are you?
Right.
You want to turn your microphone on? You want to tell us a little bit how many patients, how many students do you have, and do you see the growth of the program?
Well, we anticipate having around 15 students in each cohort. And this will be a group of students, the cohort, from the 120-mile radius of Texarkana.
On both sides?
Well, yes,
Okay.
to be truthful with you. We'll recruit in Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana, but primarily in the Texas area.
And most of these are already professional educators.
Well, some are teachers with master's degrees who want to go on for the superintendent certification program and then the doctoral program. Our 12-hour superintendent certification program can be incorporated within the doctoral program, so we'll recruit heavily from our superintendent group.
How much of the course is face-to-face?
About 51%. We want it to be face-to-face. We did a comprehensive survey back, about a year ago in the area with all of the administrators in the area, and overwhelmingly they want a component of face-to-face. They like the online because it's convenient, it's flexible for them, but they want to be able to come together in a seminar, in a group, to talk with each other face-to-face. So we anticipate 51, a little over half of the time will be face-to-face. But it won't necessarily be in coming to a 3-hour class every week. It might be a longer seminar on a Saturday. It might start Friday night and go on into Saturday.
Board, do you have any other questions?
I move approval.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Items 9G through K are on the consent calendar. Item 9L is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the board relating to the community college transfer student report. This did not go to the cause committee meeting, so this was emailed to you last week, board members, and Dr. Peebles.
Thank you. The legislature directs the coordinating board to conduct an annual study and report on transfer efforts by four-year institutions. And so a survey is sent out every year, and the survey asks for information that regards their institutional efforts to serve their current and their future transfer students. And the report that you should have received last week that looks like this, most of that report actually details each institution's efforts to deal with transfer issues and to deal with transfer students. And so we have presented that to you so that we can send it on to the Texas legislature. It also includes a number of recommendations in it, and those recommendations tend to be the same year after year because the issues tend to be the same year after year. But they generally call for greater collaboration on advising and for four-year institutions to make better use of ACGM and the Texas Common Course Numbering System, and to align courses and curriculum. And these are all issues that we've been working on and that the staff will be continuing to work on through its field of study efforts, and to align that with ACGM efforts and so forth.
So, Rex, were there any actionable items that we can do now that don't require the legislature?
Well, I think under our current authority, certainly pursuing the fields of study that establish lower division requirements that then must transfer and be applied to four-year majors is something that we have underway. We have a couple of fields of study committees operating now. We're about to launch a third. And so we have those underway, and that's something that we can do currently. And we can also, under our current authority, we can also try to get better alignment, and this is something we're going to make sure that happens as we proceed with fields of study, that those things are actually aligned not only with core curriculum requirements for students, but also that they're aligned with the Academic Course Guide Manual, the ACGM, which is in turn then aligned with the Texas Common Course Numbering System.
Commissioner, is there a way that we can put pressure on some of the universities that just really are barriers for this?
Well, we can certainly we can certainly create incentives for them to do so, and we already have started doing that. So, yes.
We just continue to hear about this from the community colleges, how they know the students struggle with this, and in a way, it's just a waste of taxpayer dollars when you have to retake a course because no one would accept it.
What are we doing on this item? Is it?
Well, it needs a motion for acceptance. Yeah.
Okay.
So it can go to the
I
legislature.
moved. It's a draft, and I noticed, Dr. Peoples, that You need a revision on the first page in the first line. It says vacant chair.
Never heard of him.
Thank you. Thank you for catching that.
But he did a wonderful job while he was here. But we will fix that before we send it on to the legislature.
So do we have a motion?
I moved it.
Okay, second.
Yeah.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Agenda item 9M is a report on the Carl D. Perkins Career and Technical Education Improvement Act funds to colleges for basic and leadership grants. Dr. Peebles.
The national government, in all of its wisdom, allocates Perkins funds to states on an annual basis, 70% of which is retained by the Texas Education Agency and 30% of which comes to the coordinating board for allocation to two-year institutions in Texas to be used primarily for career and technical education and support services for special populations that want to go into those career and technical education services. There are two basic parts to this, and one is the basic grants, which are allocated on a methodology that primarily revolves around the number of CTE students that have declared majors at an institution and the number of those students that are on Perkins grant funds. And so, or on Pell Grants rather. And so that methodology is used to award 70% of the approximately $25 million that we receive on an annual basis. And what you have in front of you is a breakdown of all of the two-year institutions in Texas and the amount of money that they received. And there is provisions in there to make sure that even small institutions that may not meet those threshold requirements of enrollment can still get at least a $50,000 allocation every year. A lot of this money is used for equipment purchases to bolster their CTE programs, but a lot of that money is also used for funding for special populations as well, in the form of things like note takers and reading aids and that kind of thing, child care expenses and so forth to help those students succeed.
This is a report for information only. Are there any questions? Very good. If not, we'll go on to 9N, agenda item 9N, a report to the board on school closures and or teach-outs pursuant to Chapter 7, Subchapter A, Section 7.75. Information only.
Yes, and as you can see, we have three institutions to report this time that have reported closures. One is Lighthouse College that closed in Dallas when they lost their support from the church that had been providing a lot of financial and institutional support for them. As you can see, though, they been successful in transferring their student records and transcripts to the theological school that was associated with the church. And so we believe that has been taken care of. University of Phoenix, which has gone through a fair amount of constriction in recent months, is closing two of its physical locations in Texas, one in Austin and one in Houston. And they have made arrangements for both teach-out provisions to accommodate their students, and they have also made sure that those student records and transcripts will be maintained by their corporate headquarters as well.
Rex, do you think that the University of Phoenix is shrinking because of competition, or what is have they presented any reasons why they're...
Well, I think primarily the proprietary schools tended to really boom during the recession. And now that the recession is officially over and employment is climbing, their enrollment is declining along with it.
Okay.
That has a lot to do with it, I believe.
Very good.
So that's happening all over, wherever they're located, though. It's not just here.
Oh, no, it's a nationwide thing for them. Yes, so they've closed a number of locations around
and that's why I was
the
just
country.
Trying to get a handle on how many have they closed, and the process that they're following has been working. I mean, other states also?
Yes, as far as I know, they have been.
Nobody else is having issues or...
You know, and they have a pretty big presence, and so they have a fairly well-established infrastructure that can provide for the teach-outs and that can provide for the transcripts that students need. And so unlike some institutions that there's only one or two of them around and they close down, everything goes with them, they've been able to maintain their services by and large.
Very good. Item 9O was on the consent calendar. Item 902, consideration of adopting the committee's recommendation to the board relating to the proposed new Chapter 4, Subchapter S, Sections 4.310 to 4.317 of Board Rules concerning participation in the State Authorization Reciprocity Agreement. Dr. Peebles.
Thank you. These rules have come before you originally, I think, as an emergency rules and now as regular rules. The essence of the rule changes are that it establishes the Higher Education Coordinating Board as the portal for institutions to put their applications through to SARA NC, which is the State Authorization Reciprocity Agreement. We've received one comment based on the fact that SARA requires institutions to follow what is called the Council of Regional Accrediting Commissions, or better known as CRAC, guidelines and best practices when it comes to distance education. SARA covers only those programs that are completely online. And although they may have some, with some caveats about that, about some clinicals or internships. But our current rules require institutions to follow best practices as defined by both SACS and by the coordinating board. And so the comment that we received on this and the subsequent agenda item had to do with requiring institutions to perhaps follow three different sets of criteria. And so what we've promised to do and what we will do is take a look at all three of those sets of criteria. And my preliminary view of these is that there's an awful lot in common among all three sets of those criteria. And that it's going to be, I think there'll be a fairly easy way to accommodate institutions so that they're not trying to adhere to three different sets of standards and that we can coalesce on one.
Any questions? Need a motion?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 903. Consideration of adopting the committee's recommendation to the board relating to the proposed new Chapter 7, Subchapter B, Section 7.50 to 7.57 of Board Rules concerning participation in the State Authorization Reciprocity Agreement.
The item that you just passed on referred to public institutions in Texas, and this item does exactly the same thing for private institutions and proprietary institutions, whether they be whether they be profit or nonprofit institutions in Texas.
Any questions? We have a motion and a second. Did we have a second? Oh, okay. Other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 9O, 4 through 7 were on the consent calendar. Agenda item 9P1 is consideration of adopting the committee's recommendation to the board relating to the proposed amendments to the Chapter 4, Subchapter C, Sections 4.54 and 4.58. 9P1. I don't have it on the consent.
Is that one of the ones that
I believe it's not on the consent. No. Consideration of adopting the committee's recommendation to the board relating to the proposed amendments to the Chapter 4, Subchapter C, Sections 4.54 and 4.58 of Board Rules concerning the Texas Success Initiative to support developmental educational reform efforts. Gerald Brooker is here to talk about this. Thank you.
Thank you. In the interest of time and why it's not on the consent agenda, we did receive one comment. This comes from emergency rules that you all had already previously approved, moving the time from 12 months to 24 months to use this sort of exemption from the college preparatory course. We received 3 comments from one person, and the comments basically dealt with how would it be implemented and some confusion about whether students still would be eligible to take the course or have to take TSI again. So basically, The answer is we're going to provide FAQs and trainings not only for the school districts, but also for the institutions to understand the new change. And no amendments or language change came from the comments at all.
Did you communicate with the commenter?
Yes, and we had to respond to
every comment. Commentator's okay with everything?
Yes. Move approval.
We have a second. Any questions? All in favor, say aye. All opposed, motion passes. Items 9P, 2, and 3 were on the consent calendar. And item 9Q is a report on institutional request acted on by the commissioner or assistant commissioner since the previous board meeting. This is for information only. Dr. Peoples.
Thank you. This is the usual report that we submit on actions taken by the division. And as you can see, we approved 42 new degree and certificate programs. We also approved 15 institutional requests to phase programs out and issued 23 certificates of authorization, and we did receive one preliminary planning notification from an institution. And all of those items are listed for you in the white pages behind the blue pages.
Are there any questions? Okay. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the business of the Committee on Academic and Workforce Success.
Well done. All right. Well, that does bring us to much ahead of schedule and on time for lots of good things. So you look like you're about to say something.
Much.
We won't have a quorum.
Right. And to be clear,
you're leaving?
We're ready to adjourn.
John will leave.
I believe, is everybody staying for lunch?
John is not. We'll lose our quorum, so I think we can adjourn.
And I was just checking the committee structure. I don't believe we'll have a quorum even of a committee. So
All
as
right,
a result,
then we will,
you could adjourn. That's true.
And that would be. So I have a motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you all very much.
Congratulations.
Good meeting.
So,